Hello and welcome to another Webster report on this Sunday, the 12th of October 2025. I want to start off the show by thanking you for all the emails and messages that we've had through the week. We've had a lot of things going on, including personal things with Alex, with Russ, with myself, even with Taylor. But those personal things try and come together once a week to try and bring at least a perspective from different points of view. Because, we do get accused, don't we, of people who seem to say they know who we're talking about, that you'd go on about the same stuff and you bore people and you depress people. Well, the people who watch don't seem to because of the messages that we get. But maybe we're just not really funny, Alex. Maybe we need to make more jokes about things. So, have you got any jokes about the genocide and the democide that's been going on? Because I love jokes about democide and genocide, mate.
Well, I mean, it's a funny one, isn't it? With light and darkness at the end of the day. I mean, I think sense of humour is important, but it's sometimes it's difficult. I mean, I worked in mental health for a long time, and sometimes we used to go out on work stews. And when we went out on work stews, you should have seen some of the women in particular blowing off steam, crazy antics. So it was like slapstick. So I understand at points, the fact that life is serious. I mean, we all do. And so sometimes, we're looking for light relief or we're looking for an angle. But obviously, we're never sure when we've crossed the line. If you look at comedians like Frankie Boyle really pushing the envelope, a lot of them really sail close to the edge, don't they? And they cause offence. And but that's not for everyone, but other people love it. But I think people need catharsis. There's a lot of strife in the world where people are carrying a lot of stuff, and they all find their own ways of dealing with it. I think that sometimes externally humour can look like one thing, but it's just a person's own attempt to not, if you like, the Titanic seems like it's going down, and the guys on board was still playing their instruments to try and keep everyone chipper, even though it wasn't the Titanic. But you know what I mean.
You beat me to that one.
I shouldn't say it really. I'm a bit too serious. I shouldn't have used the truth there, but unfortunately, I found myself unable to constrain myself.
This is it.
We can call it Titanic. Right.
This is it. After 15 years of work on not only just doing research and studying, but I mean, actually standing in courts, actually going to places and engaging with judges and QCs and solicitors, you tend to find there's a generalisation where the mass majority of people don't actually know what the goings on are really, because we all think we're engaging in something that it's just it's like a business. We're engaging in commerce whenever we do these things. So when we're going into a court, a lot of these people who are in courts believe that, well, we're just engaging in business. But when you come up and say, well, I'm not engaged in this business, what are you applying this business to me for? And they don't know how to accept that. They don't know how to engage with it. They don't know what to do. So this is where the judges then stand in and stamp their feet and say, we don't want you to talk about that. But then all of a sudden we find ourselves in a court system that isn't conducive to justice. So what do? Do we make jokes about that, Alex? Do we just laugh about it and make fun of everybody? Let's watch somebody try and make the dinner and have a laugh at that. Or do we actually say, look at what's going on? What can we do about this? What could you do about this? Maybe you can just make some cheese on toast and have a think about it. But maybe you could say something or do something or speak to somebody that changes something. But at the end of the day, it's got to come down to at least a conversation, Alex. And when we started this show, remember, we had other podcasters telling us what a good show it was. What a thing we were doing. Oh, but now it's boring. Now it's depressing. Oh.
We're in
I think I might. No, I think I'll just go home, Alex. I think I'll just go home. What? I don't get it.
The thing is, though, no one's commented in the chat yet. This could be the first show that has a negative number of users watching.
Well, we've got people watching. Do you know what? This is what it was about, though. This is what it was about. We got to the point where nobody was talking. So we said we'd just start this show, and if people watched and if people engaged, and I have, the emails that I get, I don't know what Russ gets, I don't know what you get, I don't know what Taylor gets, but the emails that I get is all about thank you. And it's not about us doing anything for thanks. It's just that people are going, wow, that makes sense, or I'd not thought of that, or I've been talking about this for so long. And it's all about trying to move that forward. And, well, how do we engage everybody with this? Because this is now impinging on everybody.
Is that the kind of email you get? I get emails about shaving me tash off and prancing around in my boxer shorts. You get a much different mail than me, mate.
Well, I'm getting a message now saying that the YouTube chat is not open.
Oh, I wondered. I said, hello, world.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's interesting. Because I said, hello, world, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. What's going on? Like, has there been some like magic voodoo effects of the live that went out earlier that everyone's, the rats have left a sinking ship? But
well, I'm looking at it now, mate. I can't. There's no chat.
What are we going to do about that, Paul?
There's no chat room. I've just brought it up on YouTube. There's no chat room open. So, this is why one of the comments was, why don't we use video anymore? It's because we have a lot of issues with tech. I mean, I'm in the Northwest. You're in Leicester. Russ is in Michigan. Taylor's in Washington State. We're all over the place. The bandwidth is like pretty thin. So it's easier to, especially for me hosting anyway, it's easier for me to try and be able to share videos and, not to always share my handsome face. It's always about trying to keep the bandwidth. But from what I'm seeing here, I can't see why there is no chat room open on the YouTube channel. So, je ne sais pas, mate. It looks like it's just me and you tonight because I'm, there's nothing coming up, nothing whatsoever, and that's definitely down to YouTube.
I'm alive.
And not myself.
Well, maybe we should make it extra boring this evening then, because nobody can actually say anything. So we've got total control. Why don't we become like total fascist monsters?
Maybe I could just broadcast somebody else's podcast.
Yeah, well, why not? I mean, it could be fun. It's a real mystery. It's very strange not having the feedback because normally we'd have some external perspective, and it was even boring then.
It is.
So it's going to be insufferable for people now, mate. I mean, there's going to be reports of suicides. People are going to be jumping off bridges.
People will be saying, "Why is there no chat room?"
Yeah.
Oh,
well, anyway,
see the messages I'm getting. It's Aaron. It's Aaron who's messaging me, and he's saying I might have to restart YouTube. Well, I can't restart YouTube. I don't even know what to do here. I don't even know what to try. It says chat is disabled for this live streaming. I've not disabled that chat. But anyway, while I have a look at this, Alex, I'll see if I can get something up and working. But let's just look at what's happened this past week. I mean, we're seeing a lot of this Charlie Kirk stuff now, and there's so many conspiracy theories that have, sprouted up about this. I mean, you could even look through the trees and see that Charlie Kirk could have possibly been groomed for something because he has been saying all the right things up until the past year, where all of a sudden was there a stand down order on October the 7th? Something's not quite right about this. So we're seeing now that this big peace plan has been promoted. And, the woman who won the Nobel Peace Prize insists Donald Trump needs it. So Trump's going to get this peace prize, yet Jared Kushner's brokered all this. And we've seen Kushner come up on this before. So have you got anything to be able to expand on that while I try and sort out this YouTube stuff?
Well, that's a small topic to start with. What I think I will do by way of addressing it is bring a few threads together while you have a bash at trying to enable the chat. There's a couple of things specifically that the themes are important, I think, with this. When you look at the whole situation in that region, there's clearly what's going on here is we talk about bloodlines quite a bit. I mean, you do in particular. But what I would like to sort of shift the focus a little bit and talk about an ancient blood feud, which started when Cain killed Abel. And that was the firstborn killing the secondborn. And I might have said last week, I can't remember if I did. Obviously, Ishmael was the firstborn. He didn't kill Isaac, but Isaac inherited the promise. And then obviously we had Esau and Jacob, who were twins, but Esau was born first. And Jacob, he engaged in some deception, but he ended up taking the birthright as the secondborn. And you had Ephraim and Manasseh and so on later on. And was it Reuben, one of Jacob's sons? First and secondborn issues all the way through. I was reflecting on this earlier in the week, because if you think about things like developmental psychology and the rearing of children and sibling rivalries and stuff, if you look at our royal family even today and all royal families, you've got this firstborn rule. Obviously, it's a firstborn male to become king, but it's the firstborn that inherits. And because of that, I think it was Prince Harry, with all that controversy, wrote that book, Spur, where he really is effective. I've not read it, but it's pretty clear that he's viewing himself as a spare part, and that is legacy. Because what happens in families, and even more so in the royal families, the firstborn child carries all the expectations. Now, in the case of royalty, it's all the expectations of continued royalty being in the public eye. But even on a smaller scale, when you're not dealing with royalty, in families, the firstborn child is the first child, basically, because, again, those parents have never been parents before. They've never messed up before in parenting a child. And they have a child, and they don't really know what they're doing because they're working it out for the first time in the context of the, relationship. I mean, these days, often there's a lot of single parents, a lot of single mothers bringing up kids, makes it doubly difficult. But even if the family is held together, that first child, if there's several, carries the weight of expectations. And, like I want to look in my case, my dad was a smart chap. He was an engineer, but he was born in poverty and he didn't have any realistic opportunity to go to university. It just wasn't an option. I think there were 13 kids in his family, and he was the youngest. So he had the opposite experience, I suppose, of being the eldest, but the eldest takes the expectations. So with my dad, when I came along, it was a case of, well, you know, I didn't get a chance to go to uni. He was smart, he'd done well, he was an engineer. If he has the chances, if Alex has the chances that I had, he could do even better for himself. So it comes from a place where the parent really, really wants the child to do well, but also is acting out or dramatizing a lot of their own stuff, the ways in which, the areas in which they failed, didn't achieve what they could have done, and they determine that their child will have the opportunities that they never had. So you can see that in human terms, in human families, what tends to happen is that the first child cops it. They cop, and also I've seen it with families with 3 kids three siblings. The youngest often gets uber spoiled, and then the one in the middle often is resentful of the eldest and the youngest. But the bottom line is that first kid gets all the parental projections. And if you look at the plague of the firstborn, if you look at that, again, it's God's judgment on the viability of Egypt, because obviously if you kill the firstborn, you're killing the lineage as it's supposed to happen. The determined order of things is destroyed. So if you then look at what happened from the beginning, from a Christian, Judeo-Christian perspective, what's happening is that God seems to be thwarting this principle of the world, that the firstborn is the one that will be the imperial power, the one of succession, the worldly leader. You know, in other words, kingdom principles in worldly terms operate through succession, through the eldest. And yet, right from the beginning of the narrative, it doesn't work that way. Even Cain, who's the firstborn, is envious of the secondborn Abel, kills him. His blood cries from the ground, and then the Sethite line comes. So both Abel and Seth are types of Christ. Obviously, Christ can't come from Abel because he's dead, but his blood crying from the ground is a reflection of ultimately Jesus' blood hit the ground and redeemed us. And then Seth was the lineage through which Jesus came. Cain was the one who had the mark upon him. The whole lineage then, you know, with you know, a lot of the Canaanites, it's massively connected with that bloodline that had a curse and a mark upon it and was much more depraved. So in these blood feuds, what you've got in that whole area, I mean, obviously Christians have got dragged into it, but it's mainly Jews and Muslims now. But at one time, they were all brothers, tribally, genetically. There was a regional deity, Elohim, and they were all coming from that same place regionally. And then obviously the promise came to Abraham and it became more specific. But these were all blood brothers. They were all connected. And because of these, you know, these lineages and this descent, and thematically, the firstborn kept getting removed from the inheritance, and there were consequences. So, you know, Cain kills Abel, the beginning of the blood feud. And that blood feud is now, it's taken over the whole of the Holy Land, the Middle East. And what's happening now in the world today, whether it's Trump or, you know, people talk about Russia, the rest of the world has been polarized along left-right lines. So what tends to happen is people like Starmer and the leftists are aligning with more Islamist ideology, and the Jews and the Christians, you know, are more sort of on the right, towards the right wing. And so what's happening is the whole rest of the world is being sucked into this polarization, which is a historical blood feud that started in the Holy Land and the surrounding region. So everyone just got co-opted into this, and they're taking one side of the line against the other side of the line. And essentially, it's like it's like an Armageddon scenario where all the nations come and descend, and where it started, where the blood feud started, where all this drama started, where there really was kinship, there's become sibling rivalry, never got addressed energetically. So you've got this Islamic Jewish thing, and of course, because the Jews only have a small state of their own and are surrounded by obviously Islamic states, they're massively under the cosh. And then obviously Jesus comes into the mix, and as we said many times about what he said to the woman of Samaria, the true worshippers, will worship in spirit and truth. The time is coming, and now is, when that will happen. In other words, it's not geographical, but everything was based on land rights, geography, claims from God, who had the claim, and my God's better than your God. But originally, they all had this shared reality under Elohim, and then they just branched out. But that envy, that jealousy, that murder, that sibling rivalry has sort of passed down energetically to the present day. So what we see now with the Zionists versus the Islamists and everybody else getting drawn in to take sides, Greta Thunberg, free Palestine, and she's doing that stupid thing on the flotilla, and it's all a PR stunt. And nobody knows really what the full truth is. We just know there's this massive polarization. So Trump's on one side, and now he's brokered a peace, and we know what it says in the Bible about when peace is declared, suddenly destruction will come upon them all. So definitely, mate, there is something going on that is significant and that we need to keep our eye on. I know it's in the chat. Who's Kipper Trace?
We have got one. We've got Kipper Trace, who said hurrah. So there's some chat room there somewhere. Aaron is saying he still can't see it, but I've no idea what's gone on. I've no idea what's gone on with the chat. It normally opens up as soon as we start, but hey, somebody seems to be able to see something.
Yeah.
So hopefully, Jerry's in. So hopefully, people can now start to have something
starting to kick in. It could have been delayed. Yeah, so that's my theory anyway, Paul, that we've inherited this blood feud. The other side of it then is, I would just add, is, from a Christian perspective, so to come into this sort of Islamic Jewish conflagration, which is now the Central Axis, we've also got what we understand from a Christian theological point of view is something that I've shared a few times in the past. I've not done it for a while. The different theories of the atonement, and one that really got squashed the classical view was in place for the first 1100 years of the Christian church and got displaced by what became the views of Saint Anselm and then Peter Abelard. He was a humanist, and they had different takes on it. And the one that got displaced, it was basically, it was a guy called Gustave Lane. He's European. In I think 1931, he wrote Christus Victor, and he said that we lost this view of the atonement. And the early church fathers were much more keen on this view, that the problem that we all face is that God's adversary, Satan, hates God, was in rebellion, hates all of God's creation, including human beings, and ultimately wants to destroy them, wipe them off the face of the earth. And the real problem is that even though the phrase didn't exist at the time of Stockholm Syndrome, all humans have gone into agreement with their captor, who is Satan. And ultimately, therefore, when they fight battles against each other and are dividing in this way, basically the enemy is playing both sides of that equation. Yeah. And we talk about it regularly, where George Galloway talks about two cheeks of the same arse. So people are aware that there is this sort of dualistic split between two sides, and it's a Punch and Judy show. But from a Christian theological point, the enemy Satan basically has co-opted optically two sides, and he is basically playing both of those sides, and we've gone into agreement with him. And that's what Jesus came to do, to end that. But to end that, we have to recognize that he's the solution and stop agreeing with our captor. And that view isn't really as prominent. It's all about, the atoning work of Christ on the cross. But it's not just to save me as an individual, save you or somebody else as an individual. It's to rout his enemy, who hates God. He hates God's creation. He hates human beings. And he's trying his best to destroy everything. This is why these blood feuds, these conflagrations, these tribal battles are all sponsored and underwritten by the enemy. And Jesus said, all this stuff about land rights, it's not about that. It really isn't. But obviously, God did promise Israel through Isaac and through the descendants, which obviously we know Jesus fulfilled more fully. But he promised them the land, and they haven't had that part of the land. And since 1948, they have had. But now, of course, the Muslim nations around are having a problem with Israel because of the Palestinian situation. So Muslims are coming in and supporting Palestine because they believe that Muslims are being attacked by Jews. So the actually complex situation where in reality, Muslims and Jews have been living side by side, intermarrying before all this agitation took place. Things were a lot better on the ground than got portrayed. And it's largely manufactured to create this polarization, to create this enmity, that the enemy can continue to put the oil on the fire and bring about this final conflagration around land rights and land claims, which can never be resolved.
Well, this is the thing about the Jews. This is why I always talk about the term of Christian might have to be redefined. Because when we talk about Jews, Arabs and Palestinians, Jews and Palestinians, Jews and Arabs, whatever we want to call them, live together in that area of the world peacefully for quite a bit. But then coming up to 1948, that started to change. Since 1948, we've seen this massive change where we've got white Jews claiming to be of the Israel of God. And yet, since the cross, when we look at it, Alex, the Israel of God includes two categories of people, Jews and non-Jews. And both are Israel. Why? Because it's those people who believe in Jesus are now of Israel. It's not of the land. So we are watching people who are working from just the Torah, just the Old Testament, and claiming that they can be this Sanhedrin and everything and bring it all back to then do more sacrifices. I know we've had red heifers already sacrificed, but they want to build the temple and then bring new sacrifices in. And yet, if we see more animal sacrifices, we are seeing abomination according to the word of God. So we're seeing something actively being put in place, supported by the US, supported by us. This is what they are doing. Why? What do they want from this? Has this got anything to do with the Chinese social credit system that's about to be tried to be imposed into the UK? Yes, in every way, because that's the epitome over in the Middle East. But we have got to have all this stuff happen. So again, it comes down to this digital ID. We've got to stop it. If we don't stop it, then we have serious ramifications from that. If we ignore it and make jokes and try and laugh about it and then just ignore it, let's just look in a different place, Alex. Let's just not talk about it, because then we don't upset anybody and nobody gets depressed and nobody gets bored, but we're still in the same position. Do you know what? I've always had bigger balls than that, me, Alex. I've got to go full on with this stuff. And I've done it for 15 years, but this has battered me. This battered me into the ground, learning the truth. So then I should just not talk about it, never tell anybody because I bore it. It's just stupidity. And I can't lower myself to that anymore.
I mean, the thing about that is, pal, I mean, let's just have it straight. Jimmy, who we're talking about here, is a content creator. So, and we're content creators, and sometimes you get these spats, and sometimes they can be personal, and sometimes they can feel personal. And I don't think we should shy away from having a conversation. It's difficult when you're having a conversation with the person in question, but I don't think there's any big deal. I mean, obviously, we all there's a fine line between attacking people and making constructive, critical contributions. So critical doesn't necessarily mean negative. But the reality is we are all in a melting pot. There is a place for humour, but there's a place for seriousness, and nobody really knows where the line is. We're all just like poking around in the dark, giving it our best shot. And at the end of the day, we're playing the part that we feel we need to play. And people coming on, obviously, on the chat, they do seem to contribute in the chat. And in a way, they might feel, that
Alex, what do we do? Me and you, there was a question posed that there's all these protests going on. So have I gone and protested about all this stuff? Well, no, I've not. But did any of those protesters come to a courtroom where I was when I was standing up against judges, against QCs, against councils, against the police? Was there any of those protesters there for me? No. So it's absolutely ridiculous that somebody can say, why have you not done this? Then these are doing it's trying to create content. And we don't need to focus on whoever it was, because it's not just that one. There's other people that are doing it. Other people are trying to deflect away from what is going on. It's like John Wedger's always been going on about the Metropolitan Police covering up child porn rings. Always talked about it. He's now getting mainstream acknowledgement of it. Oh, is he created? Is he paid for? Is he this? It doesn't matter. He's talking about it. So that means that we can talk about it. But then when we see 12,000 people arrested and sent to jail, for 12,000 people in this country sent to jail, Alex, for posts on Facebook or X or Twitter, whatever. For only 400 people in Russia last year got put into jail for things like that. So we're seeing a massive difference. We're seeing a massive fall one way or another, and we've got to grow up. We really do. I'm sick of this tit for tat stuff. Grow up. If you've got some balls, and if you've got a decent mic, come on here and tell us.
Yeah. I just had somebody try my door. I'm in a hotel, right? And I thought it was Jimmy. I thought he'd come down from Wigan. I'm not joking here, right? It's like someone was trying to get in. I think it's a case of the wrong room. But for a second, I thought it was Jimmy coming from me with a machete or something. No offense, Jimmy. I'm just using some material there to lighten the mood in the spirit of humour. But I don't know who it was. But that's why there was a bit of a pause. But it's interesting because it's all about opinion, right? So I know it's a comment from Chris O'Rourke in the chat saying they're not Jews, they're the synagogue of Satan. Right. Well, that's a specific reference that was made in Revelations chapter 2 and 3 when it's talking about the letters that were written to the churches, and a lot of people think that's specifically related to the end time scenario and a futurist understanding of Revelation, that it speaks about what's going to happen at the time of the end, and that these are therefore this synagogue of Satan that John spoke about on Patmos. I think really Jesus wouldn't have been talking about Jews. He'd have been talking about Judaizing Christians, probably Christians who were suggesting that they were still maintaining the Jewish traditions, which was something that Paul himself had dealt with, because obviously early doors in the church, there was this big tension in the crossover between Judaism into Christianity, because Paul, Christianity, the Jerusalem church would not have survived, and it didn't really. And regardless of what was going on, people try and reconstruct the mindset of Paul and say he perverted the faith. But ultimately, if he hadn't separated Judaism from circumcision and Sabbath worship in particular, and the other markers that they had, then what would have happened is it would have got sucked back into Judaism again, and it would no longer have been about Jesus. So despite the merits that there might be about, obviously, Sabbath observance, things like not eating pork, a lot of the laws, ultimately at that time it was necessary to separate off because of the Judaizing Christians. So I personally doubt that the people who are in the truth movement who've identified the current Jews, as Ashkenazi rather than Sephardic Jews, and are saying that there's some kind of jiggery-pokery gone on, and that actually this Zionist movement is this synagogue of Satan. I don't buy it. And the New Testament basically says that God will turn his attention back to Israel. There are Jews. I mean, the thing is, you can't separate, like I was saying before with this blood feud. Originally, it was just one big region, and they all had El as the deity. And they're all distant cousins genetically. To make a distinction between Arabs and Jews is quite challenging now genetically. It's very, very difficult for Jews to maintain a pure bloodline. You saw in the book of Ezra and Nehemiah in the Old Testament, after the Babylonian captivity they brought back to their land, there'd been a lot of marrying of foreign wives. And ultimately, the lineage of being Jewish came through the mother. So there was this sort of threat, ethnically and culturally and genetically. So over time, a small nation like this, thinking that it's, genetically pure as a bloodline, it's very difficult for it not to get watered down. So that when you're talking thousands of years later, when you just do your ancestry tests, most of us are mongrels over here. We've got little bits of Viking in us and little bits from all over the place. So you can't really make the genetic claim anymore. So then what is a Jew? And of course, Jews then obviously will claim that it's because of their adherence to faith, their belief in Yahweh, the promise of the land, and so on and so forth. And, a history geographically being in the land. We also know that it was the Romans trying to vanquish the Jews. They hadn't been successful. And in 133, it was Emperor Hadrian, that waged this war against them to put down the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 AD. They never managed to obliterate the Jews, even when they deported them. So they renamed Israel Syria Palestina. So Palestine didn't even come into existence until 135 AD. Prior to that, it was always Israel. So all these clowns who say Israel never existed and it was only created in 1948, they need to brush up on the history. That doesn't mean I'm taking, a pure Israel side, that I'm like some kind of Zionist and I've got a target on my head. I'm just recounting the facts. And it's complex when you look at genetics and when you look at the whole marriage thing and the religion and the claims and the land rights. It's extremely complicated when you're charting something going back at least to when Muhammad turned up. So you're talking 1400 years now that this has been a massive melting point of competing claims, and it's not going to get resolved anytime soon. As people keep holding on to their sectarian perspectives, they'll simply reinforce a position that they're indoctrinated into anyway. And I think this is why Jesus provided the answer by saying, holiness, spirituality, the presence of God is not geographical. Then he was very clear on that. And he critiqued all traditions that suggested otherwise, because the true worshippers, the temple is inside you. The kingdom is not just inside you, it's all around you. But the spirit and the sense of worship is inside of the human being.
For me, the church, which is the body of Christ, which is every Christian that's within that body. Now, that Christian, for me, it's like I said, we've got to redefine this term Christian, because if you're in a religion that allows you to confess to a man who can forgive you for sins and tell you to do so many Hail Marys, or you can pray to Mary, or you can pray to the saints, we can say, well, that's Catholicism. Well, that's not what the Bible says. That's not what the scriptures say. So the scriptures don't say you can do that. So if Christianity is to follow Jesus, then Christianity is not following Catholicism. And I can say that because I have never had a foot in any of these camps. I've witnessed all these camps. I've witnessed the left footers and the right footers be in the same place, have the same sermon, have the same hymns, but they still aren't the same. Catholics don't like Protestants and vice versa. My family grew up with the Irish in Liverpool, Catholics and Protestants not getting on, and that's not what the Bible says. So these religions that claim to be Christian can't be Christian. And therefore, the Jews that say we are Jews because we've converted to Judaism and we've now gone over and got this geographical position and now God's on our side, this is all like real egotistical, prideful, man-made stuff. You know, it's at the end of the day, we've got to be able to look at this objectively. There's no, you know, we've talked about it a lot, Alex. We've got to have humour. We've got to have a sense of humour about all this stuff. But we've also got to be serious and not cry away from things either. You know, it's not good enough that you've had a bad life and I've had a bad life. We've got to try and overcome that and then try and bring something out to help people to see that the evil of this world, everything's connected, which it is, and there's one way out. And there's a book that says this is the only way. And all the religions that say they follow that book say that's wrong. So it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter how hurt your bum is because your dad didn't like you, or your mum didn't like you, or your family didn't like you. You lose family and friends left, right, and centre for telling the truth. You know, you get called names because the truth might offend people. Well, tough.
Well,
It's time. Time. It's just time to grow up. Put your
the thing,
hands together.
I've always been a peacemaker, but I'm not anymore. But that doesn't mean I'm a war maker. I mean, we all change and grow. The point is, you know, at the end of the day, that I've been talking a little bit about Jung recently. Now, the point is, if I talk about Jung, a lot of Christians who are down the line, some Christians believe that Carl Jung is part of the occult. So there's some people who believe that any worldview, system, experience, articulation of a position, so psychology becomes a problem. And psychology, at its best, is an analysis of the mind and how it works and the impacts of how we shape minds. Now, ultimately, that didn't start in psychology. It started in philosophy with the philosophy of mind. And, you know, Hegel wrote a book called The Philosophy of Mind. There's been a strong tradition in developing the philosophy of mind. And Descartes asked, you know, how does the mind relate to the soul? And he talked about the pineal gland. And we have different perspectives in the pineal gland now, and people talk about calcification of the pineal gland and opening of the third eye. So all these esoteric and spiritual and energetic views get connected into what was originally a philosophy of mind. These are all just positions, they're just theories by which people try to make sense of the world. So the bottom line for everyone is, everyone's got their own experience. Every person who walks the earth is unique. Even identical twins have different experiences. So from their vantage point, they all form a uniquely subjective take on life through all the experiences that they have. Everybody has a different experience. Everybody has a different genetic blueprint. So we're all just trying to make sense of our own experience in a way from our starting point. Some people use spiritual, religious frames, whatever. Some people become more cynical than others. Some people are more burned than others. Some people are born with a silver spoon in the mouth. But that's not all that it's made out to be. I wouldn't want to be a royal. Never mind just the corruption. I wouldn't want to be constrained in that way. I wouldn't want to be famous. I'd rather be free. I'd rather not have the shackles of fame. And even wealth. Look at footballers, super wealthy footballers. How many even get corrupted by drugs because they can't handle the money that they've got, the prestige and the fame? It ruins people. So I don't think there's an objectively correct position through all the experiences, all the philosophies, all the theological takes. At the end of the day, we all come on here. We're all a unique voice. We all chuck our contributions into the pot, and some of us, you know, conduct ourselves differently to others. So ultimately, the final analysis, he who sits on the great throne above will make the final decisions. And we'd all better just be sure that when we look within ourselves, that we're not kidding ourselves, that we're not running away from ourselves, that we're not projecting attacks onto others because we're not appeasing ourselves. And that applies to all of us. I'm not singling anyone out there, because we've all got to have the courage to do the work on ourselves. That's what we've got to do. And if we do that, then ultimately I don't think we'll disgrace ourselves. And this is complex stuff. This is why we come on every week. And yes, it's boring and repetitive in some senses because the world's a merry-go-round. But there's always new stuff coming up. And obviously later on we'll get onto some of that with Taylor. But we've got to have these big, hard discussions because at the end of the day, they won't go away just because we stick our head in the sand.
No, you're right. But that's the point of it. How can we get to the point of that if we can't ask the questions and we can't have the conversation, and then people want to shut the conversation down because it's boring, because it's depressing? I don't know what to do about it, Alex, because I can see where this is going, so we can just sit around and make fun of things and have a laugh until it happens. But then once it's happened, I mean, I've had this already. Webby, you were talking about this so long ago, and this has happened. Yeah, so what? Yeah, but you were talking about it. Yeah, but nobody did anything. It's not about... It's a lonely place to tell people there's something wrong. And it's a lonely place to bang a drum. And it's so easy to call people names and throw stuff at them. It really is. But at the end of the day, my family and friends, I mean, I've got a grandson now in this world. And I'm going to fight to my death for that lad. And that's the difference. Maybe some people haven't got anything to fight for. I didn't. I'd given up. I'd had enough. How many, you've known me a while, Alex. How many times have I not wanted to be here? Was it because of people calling me names and me bum hurting? No, it wasn't. It was because people won't do anything. And they want to call everybody else who's trying to, even if there's nothing that they can do now. But do you know what? I'll hold my head up high and I'll stand there and say to my grandson, well, I did this and I did that. Doesn't mean that I'm better than anybody else. But what it does mean is I'm here. This is where I am. There's nowhere for me to go. There's nowhere to move to. Somebody said, well, we could look Poland. Well, okay, Poland are having no immigrants, none of those issues. They are a Christian country, so I could go to Poland. So I'll have to learn Polish. Maybe that's what I've got to do. I don't know. But I think we've got to at least start the conversation going. There's nowhere to go for me. There's nowhere to go. This is worldwide. This is worldwide. And what we see happening in the Middle East is scriptural. So now I see this is where it is.
We're all stakeholders, Paul. We're all of us are stakeholders. Right, if we all think, this is my little life, what can I do? That's part of the problem. I mean, in a sense, individuals don't have much clout. Politically, you're not going to march, and I'm not going to march on Downing Street tomorrow and, feel Keir Starmer's collar for treason. It's not going to happen. For selling out. That's been happening systematically over time, but we're not going to have much say over it. But what we can do, and under COVID, what we saw happen was it was an operation, and they shut down the pubs and everything. They shut down the community hubs. Why? Because they didn't want people talking to each other. If they could propagandize them by getting them looking at the screen and telling them how it is, they could test to see, we'll wear our masks, we'll do this. It was an operation to divide the people and to undermine community and community bonds. And what's that about? Communication, talking. It's better to sort things out with jaw rather than war. If we talk about it, this is why we've got to have free speech. People have got to, and this is where, on the real plus side of comedians give us the chance to say things that are beyond the pale for everybody else. They get away with stuff that other people don't. They fulfill vital roles in society. So, when the free speech crowd, the ones who want to shut it down, come for the comedians, you're in trouble. So we've got to have all kinds of voices in the marketplace of ideas. and we've all got to pitch up and chuck our ideas into the pot. That's the good thing about the chat tonight. It's very lively, and sometimes a bit of spice, sometimes a bit of controversy. It gets people animated. So, I'm all for people spicing it up. It's just about, the Queensberry rules in boxing or whatever. No low blows below the belt. Everybody has a different view about what that means. Do we necessarily have a referee who makes an objective decision? Well, from our vantage point, that'd be God on high. But on day-to-day mundane, decisions, we've got to police ourselves. We've got to know where the line is. We've got to know when we might potentially cross a line and overstep and cause offence. But again, sometimes causing offence has its value. And, I was talking off air before we came on about how, sometimes in relationships you can get really pressed and needled and people think that's really bad and you're pulling your hair out and your life seems to be destroyed. But sometimes those people that you choose, rightly or wrongly, and it feels like a battle royal, they're pressing on stuff for you. And they're pressing on stuff for you not because they're evil, but because they've got their own stuff going on. And then it gives an opportunity for that to rise into your consciousness, into your awareness. It's like toothache. You wouldn't know there was an infection necessarily if you didn't have an abscess. And your jaw might be sticking out like this. And you might be going, I'm not going to the dentist. And then your friends go, hey, your face is out here. You better go to the dentist. Eventually, the symptom will force you to act, even if you're trying to shut it down and go, no, I'm scared of dentists, I'm not going. And then suddenly when your face is out here, your mate's going to go, what's up with your face? You need to go to the dentist, pal, you've got an abscess. So, when these things happen, they're not pleasant a lot of the time, but they sometimes force us to confront the bullshit we've been telling ourselves because, we all do it. And sometimes your best friend actually, in the Old Testament, the proverb, fearful of the wounds of a friend, but deceitful of the kisses of an enemy. So, there's that flip side as well.
Very much. Somebody in the chat room has been asking, early doors. I've only just got round to it because I'm trying to get things to work. But I'm going to try and play this. I'm not sure. It's quite, it's quite lengthy, so I'll only play a bit of it. But this is basically some of the Kalergi plan, which is what people are asking about in the chat room. Now, when we get to something like the Kalergi plan, we need to be understanding what would that mean. You think there's a guy called Kuldovan Kalergi, and he's got a plan, and you go, well, what is that plan? The plan seems very straightforward. The plan seems to, after World War One, in between World War One and World War Two, he decides that there's a policy that could be available to flood westernize the western part of the world with third world people. Now, that's going to change a lot of what you're talking about there, Alex, whether people are going to have a decision. If we go back to Afghanistan before the caliphate was put in place and Iran before the caliphate was in place, you were talking about miniskirts, women who were doing all kinds of jobs, going to university, and then all of a sudden it stops. So let me see if I can play a little bit of this. I'll try and catch it up if I can. Because, like I said, part of the reason is we're not sharing cameras all the time is because I'm trying to introduce a little bit of being able to. It's like when Taylor shares and things like that. It's trying to get things working. So let's just see what this comes out across. I'll pause it in between, Alex, or if you want me to pause it, just give me a shout, mate.
That the Jews want to exterminate the European race. Richard Coudenhove Kalergi, who is the father of the European Union and who was funded by the Jewish bankers Rothschild and Warburg. Now, this man wrote a book called Praktischer Idealismus in 1925, in which he stated that the Jews are a master race and that the Jews can only assume the throne or rule over the world by weakening the European race, and that the means to weakening the European race would be to dissolve all the European nations, destroy all their cultural heritage and their national traditions, and replace that with the European Union, and then to invite in Africans, Middle Easterners, and Asians to dilute the blood of Europeans through miscegenation to the point where they became a degenerate mixed race. And then at that point, these people would no longer have any sense of nationhood, and the ancient Jewish messianic prophecies of world rule out of Jerusalem, with Jews maintaining their nationhood and their national status, it would fulfill the Jewish messianic prophecies that the Jews could then rule the world. And this was completely in line with what Nikolai had written in 1917 and has manifested itself recently with the invasion of immigrants from Africa, from the Middle East, and from Asia into Europe, America, and Australia. And they are deliberately setting about to genocide the white race and destroy all sense of nationhood and national heritage and national culture in each of our nations.
Now, is any of that possible, Alex? Was any of that made up? Because right now, the Jews, rabbinical Jews, high ups, are going to say the same thing. So do we not believe what they're saying? Do we then say anybody who says, hey, look at this, you're racist, you're racist, you're racist? Or do we say, this is what these people are saying? I don't know where to go with that, pal.
Yeah, I've got a take on it, mate, which is essentially the problem here is, like I was saying about this blood feud from the beginning, but it's sort of a subtext of it, because the point is, what happens here typically is always the same with identity politics. So Jewish bankers, right? So there's two words there, Jewish and banker. You can have non-Jewish bankers, yeah, and you can have Jewish people who are not bankers, right? And you can have Jewish bankers. Now, Jewish bankers, like other bankers, have got a lot more power and clout, right? So the reality is that when we conflate those two terms, that's one thing. But then when we say, well, we probably think that all bankers are bad. It depends how far down the food chain you go to. Your operative operating the till, a cashier, is probably not a bad person. There's a point at which there's a ceiling on the decent, ordinary person, and then you get into the murkier stuff, just like you do in all hierarchies like Freemasonry. So the bottom line is, we know most bankers at the top level are going to be corrupt because they're into making money and robbing money off people and making money however they can. Some are going to be more bent than others. Now, Jews, there's going to be some Jews, right, who are ideological Jews, who believe in the superiority of the Jews. When Jesus came along, he said to the Jews, don't think, God said, don't think I chose you because you're special. I chose you for my purposes to reveal my plans to the world because, and we find in the mouth of Jesus, I love everyone and want to redeem the whole world. The fact that some Jews within that nation got ideas above their station and began to manipulate God for their purposes and thought that God's endorsement was proof of their specialness, they got the message wrong because they weren't reading it right, because there's a veil over their eyes. That's not because they're Jewish, it's because they're human. And Jesus said, well, Jew or not Jew, if your heart is corrupted by the fact that the world is fallen and you're playing this Stockholm Syndrome game and going into agreement with the enemy of everything, that's Satan, the adversary of God, he hates God, he hates all of creation, he hates every human being, and he wants to destroy them all, then you'll think you're a special Jew, whether you're a banker or not. And you'll manipulate and you'll develop things like the Kalergi plan, not because you're a Jew, but because you're a corrupted person. It's got nothing to do with ethnicity, biology, or anything else.
Well, that's it. That's it. I can download the documents and show this as a plan, and yet we're anti-Semitic, or we're this, or we're jumping on this bandwagon. We've got to stop crying and stamping our feet and see what is happening from the people that said that we're going to do this. So the people that said we're going to do this are doing it. And the people that are doing it are the people that we see doing it and then say, you're anti-Semitic, you're racist for pointing that out. That is beyond comprehension for me, pal.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Martin's got to be in his bonnet here talking about something being condescending. As far as I can see, I'm defending Jews. I'm defending Muslims. I'm defending. You know, it's nothing to do with the person's label. It's nothing to do with their ethnicity. That is what gets weaponized.
It's exactly. Right? It's the plan. It's the weaponizing of the plans.
And it always factionalizes, and it comes back to this ancient blood feud that I was talking about. And when we go into Stockholm Syndrome with the originator of the lie, who is turning humanity against itself to destroy. Jesus said, no kingdom divided against itself can stand. If humanity is divided against itself, and the point is, because we go into agreement with our abuser, which is Satan, who wants to destroy us, we attack each other. Now, that doesn't mean that all religions are true. All positions are equally valid. We've all got our perspective. We've all got our experience, like I said before. But ultimately, the message, as far as we're concerned, is that God chose Israel to reveal his message to the world, which he loves, which he wants to redeem from the clutches of his enemy, his adversary, who's also our adversary. And that adversary will use ethnicity, biology, identity politics, or anything to turn humans against each other. So we'll do his job for him. A constant use of the word Jews, mate, Martin. They're a Jewish people. Now, if on Rainbow we had Bungle and Zippy, if we want to create, and I'm never going to say the word Jew again, I'm going to say Zippy. Right, so that I don't have to say the word Jew. We've got to get real. We still have to use labels. You know, people have got, you know, it's like, oh, I can't believe you're calling that person black. Well, they are. You're calling that person white. Well, they are. Oh, that's really offensive. What? By using the descriptor of that person. A Jewish person is a Jewish person. Now, whether that's ethnic or by religious devotion, it doesn't matter. They're Jewish. A Muslim chooses to be a Muslim. They might be Arabic, they might be Pakistani, but they choose to be a Muslim, and therefore they're a part of Islam. So, you know, at the end of the day, that's just, we have to use labels to describe people. That doesn't mean we're labeling them. It doesn't mean we're maligning them.
But the thing is, you know, it's we've got to actually talk about what is actually happening. So, okay, we use the term Jew. Are the Jews involved anywhere in this? Possibly. Are there white people involved? Are there white people? Hey, no. Apparently, we can't just define the term Jew. You know, it's just Jew. So, like, the term Jew is meant to be a Semitic term for somebody who is from Middle East, so is an Arab. So do we have those Jews in Poland going to Israel? Are they all Semitic Jews? No, they're not. But they claim to be Jews. Why? Because they converted. That's what they did. The Khazarians converted to Judaism. That's what they did. So when we use the term Jews and we're saying that, these are the Jews that claim to be Jews, but aren't. They are the synagogue of Satan. But they're not just European. These Jews were there with the Sanhedrin. These Jews were there with the Pharisees. So we know what these Jews are. It's an ideology. It's where the Torah is weaponized. We were talking about words and people being weaponized. The Torah is weaponized by the Talmud. The Quran is weaponized by the Hadiths. You can't get away from that. But you show me a religion that says, go and kill Go and kill them, and then tell me it's a religion of peace. And what they'll do is they'll point to Christianity, and they'll say, look at the Crusades. That was Catholicism. But then they'll point at the Old Testament. Look at what he did. He said, go into that land and kill everybody, man, woman, child, animals. Why? Why? Because they weren't part of God's plan. They'd chosen to go against God's plan, and they'd chosen to go and cavort with the fallen ones. It's all documented, this, Alex. So when you actually want to go and read it, you can understand it. You don't have to get mixed up like this is. So we don't end up arguing about, you said it's because of this and meh. We don't have to do this. So...
Hey, let me just step in and end this conversation right here by saying to
you're
everyone,
not going to listen, mate. You're not going to end this conversation.
That's what I'm about to do to these guys, because I'm about to say here, the New World Order is as I said in the comments, the New World Order, whatever you want to call it, is a Jewish mafia with Gentile helpers. That's what it is. End of story. If you don't like that, suck a dick. No one cares. Hitler was a hero. He did the right thing. No, he did not mass genocide Jews or gypsies or anything else. Get that bullshit ass mainstream World War II story out of here. Accept the fact that there is a Jewish mafia just like there's an Italian mafia. That's all there is to it. Simple as.
Anything to add to that, Alex?
Well, the point is, again, like Taylor said, there are all types of mafia, Italian mafia and everything. The difficulty is, though, I do take the point that Martin's making.
We do have Jewish mafia. It's well documented, Jewish mafia.
Yeah,
and they were well above they are well above the Italian slash.
Yeah, we've got to identify. We've got to identify these things. So the problem is, though, and for me, I don't. People say Islamophobe or anti-Semitic, and it just rolls off the tongue, and it shuts down actual debate. But there is a sense in which, I have some sympathies with Martin. I think he's overpressing the point. However, I think the problem is, because the Jews as a race have got a very small, natural homeland, and no matter what you think about 1948 and so on and so forth, this whole debate is disproportionate because there's a relatively small number of Jews. And therefore it looks as if when we give any Jews attention for whatever reason, if we accuse them of something nefarious, which Jews? And then it automatically people think it's, well, that person's saying that, they're maligning all Jews. They're not maligning all Jews necessarily, but they might be doing just by slack use of language. We should always try to clarify at points. Well, what do I mean when I say Jewish this or, Islamic that?
It also comes down, Alex, when people think about World War II and think of Jews, after the H word, after the Holocaust, they think of Schindler's List. And Schindler's List, it was a wonderful film, filmed in all black and white, apart from the accentuated stuff that needed to be in colour. But it was fiction. It wasn't real. But people believe it as real, and it has been taught on American campuses to be history. Now, if you get control of these kids, and the kids go up, is it 21 in America, Taylor? You're in school at least through college and that till at least 21, possibly. And you're being taught all this stuff. So you're not getting anything that you can actually bite back on, ask questions about. And that is the difficult part. When you can't question, so, yeah, a man can be a woman. You can't question that. That's wrong. That's wrong. A man can't be a woman in any shape whatsoever. We can pretend, we can act, we can cut bits off, but we're not going to be a woman. And vice versa. And nor would it or should it be, because God created us all specifically. The man is very specific. and the woman is very specific. And when you put those two people together, wow. When you put those two people together, they become one. And it's not just a sexual and spiritual experience, but they become one. And that's the comparison of the marriage of God to mankind. That's how we embody it in physical terms in this world. And we can't talk about that. Christians can't talk about that. Christians are getting arrested. I posted last week about a Christian being given a public service notice to not preach the gospel in the town centre. Yet, 200 yards away, there's a stand preaching Muslim. You can't do this without something nefarious going on. And then when people point at that and say there's a discrepancy here, everybody goes, "You're racist." There's something wrong. There's something wrong, and we've got to grow up.
There is. I mean, the other thing is though, I'm not. You know me. I mean, I'm anything but a leftist. I'll never be a leftist. But there's a very basic problem that we all have, which is, you know, if somebody says the Christians, or somebody says the Muslims, or somebody says the Jews, straight away you have a problem. But the thing is, right, because we use language loosely, this is the problem with language. You know, we've got to use shorthand to describe things. So we use shorthand, but then everybody else hears that thing that's repeated over and over, the Jews or the Christians. I mean, if you look at how many different Christian denominations and sects and perspectives there are, never mind each unique Christian person who makes a claim to believe in Christianity, never mind whether they believe in Jesus and follow Jesus and live like Jesus, that those are further steps down the road. They just claim to be aligned with Jesus by saying they're a Christian. And then somebody goes, yeah, so the Christians believe. The Christians believe. I mean, what a statement. It's almost incoherent. Philosophically, it is an incoherent statement. The Christians believe. The Muslims believe. The Jews believe. I mean, it's bollocks. But we use that language all the time and don't bat an eyelid. But the thing is, other people hear it and they go, well, that doesn't sound right. The Jews believe. All Jews, all Muslims, all Christians. But it's the curse of language. We always use that shorthand and sometimes we get it wrong. And we've got to be mindful of that as well, because if we don't, we will end up making big mistakes. You know, I mean, if somebody said about me, described me as a typical Christian, I wouldn't say I'd be offended, but I'd go, what do you mean by that? What's a typical Christian? I'd like to enter into discourse with you about that. What do you think?
Me too.
You know what I mean? We don't fit in there. We don't fit in at all into churches. We're like the gypsies and trying to get little, you know, provision here and there. Go to a little house group movement here. I come down to Leicester where I am now. I come here because I come once every 3 months because I believe it's one of the only places where the power of God is present. And I'm not saying that the situation's perfect theologically, but the bottom line is it's a living church. And there are many churches. Look at the Church of England now. Ultimately, I'm not happy. I believe that the church of this country should not be run by a woman. So it should not be at the head of this. It's in contravention of God's order. That's the bottom line. That's the biblical position.
But does that not make you misogynist?
No. What it means is I read what the Apostle Paul said in the New Testament in his epistles, and obviously it's all about covering. Covering is protection. So God established an order. He gave mercy and grace and redemption for individual souls and the whole of his creation. But that doesn't abolish his order. And Satan is the great inverter of God's order. He wants to turn things on its head. No offense to any women out there at all, right? But the bottom line is we know the biology of men and women is different. If women run nations, and say a woman's got a finger on the nuclear button, potentially, you know, how do you...
It's all coming down to emotion, this. It's all coming down to how she feels.
And everybody knows it's right. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just how women are. They're very different to men. So the question is, for certain roles, do you want a person of a certain constitution to have the control over that type of decision? And to me, that's just the divine mandate, because it's sensible. It's part of the order that God created. It doesn't denigrate women. It talks about the roles that men and women should play that are harmoniously aligned with what God created. Like, for example, the family, man, woman, children, family. So if you're homosexual, it's not about judging somebody. Oh, that's an evil sexual sin. It might be for some people. What it does, it subverts God's order. So that's the bottom line. When we align with God's order, we can expect a society to work, to be functional. When we get single parent families, single mothers, often with multiple children, facing economic challenges and other stuff, they're having to be two parents, the father isn't in the home. Are we judging? Are we judging anyone? We're looking at the situation and recognizing that it's not going to turn out too well, that there will be potentially serious consequences for the culture. It happens, but it's not the divine template. It's not the divine design. God designed it so it would work. And the enemy, again, who we've gone into Stockholm Syndrome agreement with, is trying to destroy the fabric of it all the time in everything that happens. He's the biggest covert operative. He's the biggest mafia operator of all of them. And if people don't want to look at the spiritual dimension of this, they'll just keep looking at it superficially. And that's fine if they want to. There's merit in that, but it's not deep enough. Not as far as I'm concerned, anyway.
Oh boy.
I agree. I know I know you feel like you're. How can I put it, Taylor? That you're shouting into the wilderness. I get it.
I'm used to it, man. I am more than used to it.
Yeah, but I know what you're trying to say. It's just people don't take it how you interpret it. People take Nazis as being these people who, what we've been told and what we've portrayed, it doesn't break down to National Socialist. Then it doesn't break down to Socialist. Then it doesn't break down to Communism. So none of this stuff breaks down when we call it those names on the front, like what Alex is saying, where when we just say, oh, it's the Jews, oh, it's the Catholics, oh, it's the whites, oh, it's the blacks, it doesn't make any sense when we actually get down to it. When we talk about the gospel message, right, the gospel message is all those people that we've just spoken about. They're all bastards. They're all dead. They're all gone. There's nothing they can do to save themselves from the hell that's coming. Why? Because somebody saved us. Somebody did it. And they said, all you've got to do is believe. All of them, what you named, Taylor, and what I've just named, all of them don't care. None of them believe. And all of them say he's one of the ways, not the way. And Jesus was the only one that said, I'm the only way, and everybody else says that's bollocks. That creates a question. When you ask that question, and Alex will back me up on this, when you ask that, ask it. Bloody hell, where did I go then? When you ask that question...
You become Afro-Caribbean, mate.
I asked it! When I ask that question, it all comes back to the same point. Well, what does it all mean? And it all comes back down to, for me, I found the truth from the earliest text I can find, what everybody says, that's God's word. The earliest text I can find is Hebrew. The next best is Septuagint Greek, and the next best is King James. And I went, that's me, that's where I'm going to study. And that's where we've got to start from. When people are calling all these names out, we know there's something wrong. We know there's something wrong when we're going picking up people halfway across the channel who really hate our way of life, and we bring them over and give them things. There's something wrong with that. To point that out, that is not racist. Yet that's what we're being taught. That's what our kids are being taught. And that's why we've got to keep being depressing and boring, Alex.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's all framing at the end of the day. One man's meat is another man's poison. You've got to throw these ideas around. We need people to come on. I mean, the chat's been very lively tonight. And
Yes.
in fact, can't even keep up with it. So we've more than made up for the delay at the beginning. But it's good to have everyone on. I mean, I want to say something affirming. I mean, Taylor's going to give us some information fairly soon. So it's taken a while, but there's been a lot.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting, Alex. Sorry, Tim. I know you'll have some stuff to share with us, so I'll let you do that anyway. But carry on, Alex.
But
before you carry on, let me say one thing, Alex. That's what she said.
Yeah. Well, basically, the chat here, we do value everyone in the chat, even if there's differences, and there are. Even people who throw mud sometimes or misunderstand, sometimes you've got to clarify things. It's, when you write anything in text, it's typically capable of being distorted. So it's always better if people can come on in person because a few lines of text, misunderstandings can multiply. But generally speaking, I think we've got a great crew that come on every week. Yeah, there are some differences of opinion. Yeah, we have more scope to slap down opinions, and we have got a Christian frame of reference. And we can't make apology for that. It's just how it is. But I'd like to think that we're welcoming enough to anybody who can make a case. There's lots of interesting stuff to talk about. It doesn't have to descend into stuff that might be characterized as boring. It really can be. It's what you make it. In life, if you're a participant, if you're a contributor to a debate and you're bringing important material, you've done your diligence and you can make a case, step up, make the case. Come, let us reason together, it says in Isaiah. Let's reason together. Let's get to the bedrock of what's going on and not get divided by all this chicanery that's been going on. So, it's just to thank everybody in the chat for turning up every week and watching this stuff and participating in the ways that they do. It's all important today. It's all adding to what we're trying to do. Even if we're not able to change anything cosmetically, at least superficially, we are changing ourselves by having the debate so we can influence other people away from this debate with what we've learned and share those ideas with others. There's no way it can happen. Like I said, under COVID, they tried to shut down this type of conversation in pubs. The kind of talk that people would, over a pint talking about football, then they talk about Starmer, they talk about other stuff, they come together. It really is about the solidarity more than it is even about the content. It's about people pulling together against what is ultimately a common enemy. It's the oligarchs who are animated by who we know is the adversary of all things good. So, and obviously now, we know Taylor's got his view on Trump and everything. So,
Of course, and I think Taylor's views on stuff has got to be heard because he's experiencing it live where he lives. Whether we disagree or agree with him, he's got to be able to articulate it, and then if things happen that goes against what Taylor says, as it does if I say it or if you say it, Alex, we've got to then try and justify what was meant from the original. In the chat room, it says that the KKK have used biblical verses to justify what they did. Of course they did. So have the Catholics, so have the Protestants, so have the JWs, so have the Mormons. They're all doing that. But when we take the text on its own, Old and New Testament, when we read that all on its own together, it goes against all of what those have just been talking about. And I think that's a really interesting aspect of this because people say that they don't know who God is, they don't know God, they don't believe in God, blah, blah, blah. Have you read this? No. Then, if you've not read it, you can't say you've done everything, just like I couldn't. When I was, somebody put it on my toes. Have you read the Bible yourself? No. Well, you've got all these opinions on it. Why have you not read it? And I couldn't answer them. So I went, spot on, I'll go and read it.
I'll just say, let me just mention one thing about the KKK. People have a lot of misrepresentations of that group. No doubt, when they were formed after the Civil War in the late 1860s in America into the early 70s, they were formed by the Rothschild-controlled Democrats like August Belmont, etc. In order to kill both blacks and whites who were against the reformation of the Union after the Civil War. And that's one of the reasons why the Reconstruction phase ended up being so difficult. It was so bad that President Ulysses S. Grant had to invoke the Insurrection Act, which we're waiting for Trump to do, in order to deal with that problem. However, the modern day KKK, after they came back together, is nothing like it used to be back in those days. Nowadays, it's more of a white nationalist group that is about that is not that much different from, say, the John Birch Society. The whole point of their group nowadays is fighting for white nationalism.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point, Taylor. When they were putting burning crosses in front of yards and hanging people, that didn't work for them. Now they're doing something different. So they're still the same outfit, but they can then use scripture to justify what they're doing. The end times, Alex, maybe you know the scripture, but the end times the scripture says that people will do things believing that they're doing it in the name of God, won't they?
That's a good one. I can't specifically remember the text itself.
That's going to do me head in, that. I thought you'd know that.
It's because you've done a paraphrase. I recognise it, but it's a paraphrase.
Well, what do you think about that? I mean, Taylor's not wrong in what he's saying. It's just they've changed tack. They're doing something a little bit different. They're still the same, but they're doing something different.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter who the operatives are or what they appear to be doing. People need to see deeper than the surface. Even the truth can be a deception. Even the truth can be a decoy. If somebody gets you to look at a truth that's a distraction from another truth, then you're focusing on something that's true, that's distracting you from something that might be more important at that time. So the truth, in and of itself, and factual accuracy is obviously preferable. But if it serves to decoy you away from other more important things, then is it actually a productive thing? So I don't think it really matters. All we can do is look at all of it and keep our powder dry. Don't commit, don't be overcommittal, because the bottom line is that's when humans get themselves into trouble. They get into behind causes and this group and that group, and this is the truth and they align with this. We're all to invest in our own opinions. We develop our opinions, we need to, because these are the conclusions we've come to from engaging with life. So you've got opinions, you form them over time, but if you cling to them too tenaciously, you're at risk of becoming bigoted in a way that's unhelpful. You might be right, but the question is still, so what? So what? 2 + 2 = 4, and the sky is blue, yes. So what?
Does 1 + 1 always equal 2, Alex?
Well, we know mathematical systems differ. So, of course, outside of that frame of reference, consensus reality, of course, what is consensus reality? So then you're in the Truman Show, or you're in a version of the Matrix, where everyone's using the same parameters. And yes, there may be a reality outside of that. But if it doesn't make sense to anyone, even if it's true, it's irrelevant. It's like if you're playing a tune and nobody's listening, so what? It might be the most perfect tune in the history of all tunes. And if everybody's tuned out, you're just playing to yourself. Now, I'm not saying that means we should compromise and just play to the gallery, because that's the thing, isn't it? That where we started off, where if someone's, say, creating content to get numbers in and to get engagement, they can build profile. Now, none of us understands why anybody's building profile. People build profile for different reasons. It doesn't make it intrinsically right or wrong. It doesn't make the frame of reference right or wrong. People are just doing what they're doing. If something exists outside of the current frame, what are you going to do about it? It's like when you look at theoretical physics, you had, I think it was Isaac Asimov speculated in the 1950s, 1960s, that if you worked with Einstein's equations in a certain way, you could get past the speed of light and you'd have tachyons. But now what we've got is tardions, they're slow. And actually with tachyons, if something moved at the speed of light and you added more energy to something moving at the speed of light, which was the maximum speed that light can travel, it would increase in mass. So the energy that you applied to it would result in an increase in mass, not an increase in velocity, because of Einstein's equations. Now that's theoretically true based on the equations. And a tachyon is a viable way to describe the process of the type of particle that you're in. It's like antimatter. Antimatter is a speculative theory, but until you get matter and antimatter together in a big explosion, nobody understands its theoretical construct. And then when it happens, will it destroy the whole universe? Nobody knows. They speculate. Same with tachyons. A lot of this sci-fi doesn't mean it's false. It means it's theoretically appropriate to align with the equations, but we don't live in a universe like that, so we've no way of testing it. So a lot of their speculations about metaphysical questions lie way beyond their event horizon. We just can't test them. So what use are they? They might be true, but so what? I'm alive now. I either drink water and eat food or I don't. If I sit under a tree philosophizing and become emaciated and die of hunger and thirst, well, more fool me. So you've still got to get real in the world, in the construct you're living in, whether you're right or wrong. You've still got to breathe air, drink, and eat.
Well, the thing is, while we're doing that, we are called names, we are put into categories and this, that, and the other whilst we're doing all that. And I think that's the interesting thing where we're at now, because we've got the Conservatives, Alex, going, oh no it isn't, and we've got the Labour going, oh yes it is, and then we've got Farage and Reform going, hey, hang on a minute, you two aren't doing anything. And all of a sudden people go, Farage is right, Reform is right. All of a sudden there's some kind of foothold, and I don't believe that that's there.
He's right, Paul. He is right, but that doesn't mean he couldn't be wrong. So the point is, everyone focuses on the right.
You sound like Johnny Rotten now.
Say again, pal.
You sound like Johnny Rotten. Could be wrong. No, yeah. He could be right.
Yeah, exactly. But what he's done is critique the system correctly. He's identified the truth of the situation. Therefore, everyone can identify with that because he's speaking truth. But that doesn't mean he's not an operation. He's potentially a more dangerous operation than the liberal leftists. Than the libtards, as Taylor's, fond of calling them. So at the end of the day, when you've got a person who aligns with truth and appears to be the real deal, it's more dangerous than somebody who's obviously a cretin.
Well, let's. I mean, Taylor, have you got stuff to share, mate?
I do, yes.
Do you want to share it before I carry on, or do you want to get it done? Or we can do it after, whichever you want.
Just go ahead and do your thing first, so that way that I can go ahead and focus on my thing when I get to it.
Please don't focus on your thing. Let us know what you're talking about.
No, oh my God, this man.
Hey, I've known you a long time.
Yeah, you have. You have. Definitely.
Yeah. So let's see where this goes now. Like I said, it's continuation, but I want opinions on this. This isn't a yes, this is it, or it isn't. I want opinions on this.
You're going to need the iron of the sun, which represents Edom, which is the West, Europe, and the Americas, to get intermixed with Ishmael, which is basically Arabs and Muslims. How in the world was this ever going to happen if not for this refugee crisis? At the end of the days, you're going to have this intermixing between Esau, Edom, which is the West, and the East, which is the Muslims and the Arabs, making this influx into the world. and they're going to have children, you know, I don't want to say by the dozens, but they're going to have a far larger birth rate than the indigenous people there, and they're going to sort of conquer by number. And there are many different sources for this. One of them in Hezbollah, chapter 14, and many other sources as far as this is concerned, where it's mentioned very, very vividly what will happen to the Jews and what will happen to Jerusalem, and what will happen to the world at that time, where there will be many, many people killed and so on and so forth. So the idea of having these refugees come into Europe, it's no longer a matter of whether it's right or wrong. It's just simply a fulfillment of what it was meant to be all along. It's the fulfillment of the Hazal and the prophecies. This has to happen, and this is just another sign that we're nearing, the completion of the tikkun of the entire world.
So, what fulfillment of prophecy are we talking there, guys? What are we talking about there? We're talking about a fulfillment of people doing things to fulfill something for Judaism. But this isn't the Torah. This isn't scriptural. So what do we think about
that? Well, first of all, how old is that video?
Recent.
Like in the last year or so, or
maybe not last year. But okay. This is the same thing they've been talking about for decades, thousands. It's the same thing, Taylor. Are you still with us, Alex?
Yeah, it came across distorted. I couldn't make out everything that was said.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly, it was a little bit distorted.
Well, I can't do much about that. I'll play a little bit more then. But basically, what they're saying is that, as far as they're concerned, that Europe is now going into. You will see there's a Jewish lady on later on that Europe is going into multicultural mode, and it has to go into that. And if they don't accept it, it's not going to be good for Europe.
Oh, the Swedish woman?
A Jewish woman. And this woman says that it'll be, how did she put it? It would be bad for Europe. Do they not accept this? And it's going to be bad for Jews because they're going to play a prominent part in it. So why are the Jews playing a prominent part when the Jews aren't involved in anything, and they're always these victims? And as Martin can point out very easily, that people talk about the Jews all the time. But why are we talking about the Jews? Are we talking about them because they've done something wrong? They are doing something wrong? Are they Jews? It's all these questions, and we can't ask them. Like Dinny's having a laugh counting how many times we've used the term Jew. But it doesn't matter, because how many times we use the term Taylor or Alex or anything like that, it doesn't matter. We need to find out what these are actually pointing to. And I'll try and play this a little bit further to see if people can hear it.
Le Mashiach viendra que quand Éden, l'Europe, la chrétienté sera totalement tombée. Donc je vous pose la question, c'est une bonne nouvelle que l'islam envahisse l'Europe? C'est une excellente nouvelle, ça annonce la vie de Mashiach. Excellente nouvelle. Vous allez payer très cher les Européens. Mais un point, vous n'êtes pas mis.
That's all I hear.
Vous n'aurez pas au fil. Parce que tout le mal que vous avez fait à Israël, vous le paierez au centuple. Quand l'Italie disparaîtra, quand Édom, c'est pour ça que le QG de la chrétienté qui vient de Esav se trouve là-bas, quand cet endroit-là disparaîtra, c'est ce que veut faire l'islam, l'islam, c'est le balai d'Israël, sachez-le.
And we are saying, yes, we will love our neighbor. Last week, highest organized, a letter signed by over 1,200 rabbis. Can you imagine getting 1,200 rabbis to agree on one thing? But agree they did, and what they agreed was to ask our elected officials not to halt or even to limit the United States Refugee Admissions Program.
Did you get that? Did you both get that? What she just said?
No, it was distorted a little bit, but I couldn't pick up coherently
Right.
what the argument was.
The refugee induction program must not be halted, and of 1,200 rabbis that she joked about, we can't get rabbis to agree on anything. But 1,200 agreed that the refugee admission to the United States must not cease. Now, Taylor, that is a Jewish state. This isn't about Jews and having a pop at them. I'm telling you and showing you what these people are saying. You've only ever said in the history of what these people said.
Oh,
So where do we sit with this, Taylor? Because this isn't anti-Semitic. This isn't racist. It's like if I was stood outside your house, Taylor, with a machete in my hand and a 44 Magnum and said, I'm going to kill you and your parents now, would you go, I wonder is he making an anti Semitic or a racist remark? No, you wouldn't. So when I'm being told that there is a faction of people that have got a plan that is in action that is going to affect me eventually, it's not doing it completely right now, but it is going to. I can't bring that up because I'm anti Semitic or I'm racist or I'm homophobic. This is where they've got their power. Are you seeing a difference after Charlie Kirk? Because we can talk about the Charlie Kirk thing another time because time's gone on. But we are seeing that Charlie Kirk, and for me, Taylor, I think Charlie Kirk, might have been groomed into something, but I think he may have kicked back a little bit. And I think maybe that's why we're at where we're at. But it's been a good thing for his foundation or whatever you want to call it, his charity, because now his wife's took over it and she's on all the podcasts and we're all doing it for Charlie. So we've always seen this through history. You've talked about it many, many times, Taylor, through not only Martin Luther King and JFK and RFK and all that stuff. We see where all this starts to plough. So have you got anything? I know you've got stuff to add, but have you got how can we join it with what's going on now, Taylor, to what you're going to present?
Well, first of all, if we're talking about Charlie Kirk, I've already gone on record and said that that the whole point of that event, of that, let's be real here, that PSYOP event, was to turn number one, help turn people against the left even further, as it was basically our George Floyd moments, just without all the riots and the fires and all that and all the murders. But also, so it exposed the left, but on top of that, it also, what it did was it actually, you know what? It probably would be best, instead of explaining it, probably be best to just show you what with one of the articles that I'm going to be looking at here, because this, and I brought this up before on a few occasions, what exactly this whole thing means. Let me just get this right here. Let me know when you have it up.
One sec.
You got it?
Good to go.
Okay, good. So let's go ahead and take a look at this here. This is New York Times. Oh, yeah, and this is definitive. Like, okay, maybe not definitive proof, but this is just like basically telling you, without telling you, hey, what was the point of this event? So, New York Times, which is under the Q Operations control and has been for a couple of years now. New York Times, after Charlie Kirk's assassination, a bumper crop of conspiracy theories Much of the speculation around the death of the right-wing activist is being promulgated. I can't pronounce that word. I'm not gonna lie. Promulgated.
Promulgated.
Say again.
Promulgated. You're right.
Okay, promulgated. Yeah. Okay. By conspiracy-minded personalities he helped evaluate. Okay. So, or elevate rather. Okay, so before the special Q operation seized control of the paper of record from the once mighty and untouchable Sulzberger family, cough cough, yet another Jewish family, by the way. Ooh, he said the word Jew again. Oh my God. Yeah, Crimea River. It's a fact. They've controlled the newspaper since 1896. And they optically still have it to this day. So there you go. The tried and true method for killing a quote unquote conspiracy theory, especially one which had an anti-Semitic flavor to it, was to give it the silent treatment, if necessary, as was the case with the dancing Israelis. And by the way, before I continue on, I just want to mention that this guy I'm reading from, he's the one who created the term the dancing Israelis. He's the one who coined that term back in late 2001, back in 2001, 2002. So, yeah, just a little Easter egg right there. A limited hangout followed by an explanation, rationalization, and a declaration to move along, nothing to see here, might also be utilized to great effect. Not so with the fake assassination of Q operative Charlie Kirk. To the contrary, the Q York Times continues to greatly amplify the theory circulating in the Q blogosphere. After briefly giving free publicity mentions to Candace Owens, Steve Bannon, Alex Jones, and Carrie Lake, the article, without any hysterics, turned to the theory specifically implicating the shitty little state, aka Israel, the one theory which received the most ink. Some relevant excerpts from the article. Quote, yet another conspiracy. The idea that Israel was somehow involved in the shooting has become so ubiquitous that the country's prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, recently felt compelled to make a video denying it. Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister, said that the bigger the lie, the faster it will spread, Mr. Netanyahu said in the video. Well, somebody has fabricated a monstrous lie that Israel had something to do with Charlie Kirk's horrific murder, end quote. Tell it, Special Agent Bibi, tell it. Bibi, Kirk, and Candace. Military heroes all. The article then touched upon a few of the anomalies which conspiracy theorists have noticed, and then astoundingly, amazingly, and astonishingly dedicated an additional 215 words to the Israel theory. That alone should tell you all you need to know right there. Here. Quote, the unsupported theory that the state of Israel was involved in the Kirk's killing set off alarm bells at the Anti-Defamation League. In a statement released 2 days after the shooting, the group noted that such conspiracy narratives perpetuate centuries-old anti-Semitic tropes about supposed outsized Jewish power and control that have incited persecution, discrimination, and violence. One popular theory, the group said, raised the possibility of a false flag operation in which Israel or Jewish groups had Mr. Kirk killed because he had supposedly become more critical of Israel, or that Israel suspected he would eventually turn on them. The group said that an analysis conducted on September 11th found more than 10,000 posts on X with the phrase, Israel killed Charlie Kirk. By the way, notice that date. Very interesting date, considering we know Israel's linked to 9/11. That number rose to 72,000 posts by September 16th, the group said. The ADL then noted that Ms. Owens, who formerly worked in communications for Turning Point USA, had said on a recent show that Mr. Kirk had been wavering in his support of Israel, but the supporters of Israel had pressured him not to change his position. Ms. Owens, a vocal critic of Israel, specifically accused Bill Ackman, a wealthy supporter of Israel, of staging an intervention in which she said he had warned Mr. Kirk against backing away from his support of the country. End quote. What the scripted ending to Wag the Charlie will be is known only to the scriptwriters at White Hat Productions. The mere fact that the Israel theory is receiving so much attention now in both the Q blogosphere and the Q quote-unquote mainstream press is not good for the already badly tattered image of the shitty little state. This widely publicized assertion, even if unsubstantiated and generally still not believed, has already left a nasty skid mark on BB's boxers, which all of Satan's Clorox cannot again whiten. That's the nature of the dirty game of smear which the Cabal had once played so well, but is now itself being subjected to. You gotta love the new and improved paper of record. Trust the plan. And you see, first of all, just the fact that such a national conversation is even occurring marks a fundamental transformation in our society. And just let me just add my own thing to this. That being that, I've mentioned this before. That the way that to be able to instantly tell that this is part of the Q operation is back in the day. Before the Q operation, there what the mainstream media would always do is whenever people would speak up about something, like say a so-called conspiracy theory, the first tactic is always to ignore it and hope it goes away on its own. That's what they did to Ron Paul. They just and they completely ignored him and did not give him the publicity he needed in order to actively run for president. And so that's why he ended up losing, getting trashed so badly. They didn't even have to openly attack him. The next step, and that's if some time has passed and there has been, and it continues to grow organically, is then that's when you attack it. That's when you attack the story / theory / whatever, when it's actually gained some footing on its own, and you try to smear it using the power of the mainstream press. This is what they and even if it's ends up not being true, just the smear itself is already enough to incredibly destroy quite significantly the reputation of the person or theory. That's what happened to Richard Nixon when they came up with this Watergate nonsense. Even though the whole thing was a crock of nonsense, because the mainstream media ended up pushing the narrative, Nixon's reputation got smeared, and he ended up eventually being forced out of office. So that's the power of the media, as you are all well familiar with at this point. But the point, but the reason why I bring this article specifically up is because of the fact that Israel is the Israel did it theory is the one that's being pushed the hardest right now by both the left and the right, which really shows as I said, a fundamental change in our society. Because even as recent as 10 years ago, that you wouldn't even be able to even think about the media doing this, especially not the left, because they would always call you an anti-Semite or whatever, say invoke the Holocaust, all that stuff. But this is different now. We have we have the Israel already battered and defeated thanks to the Q operation, but now its reputation is being battered once again. And that was one of the big, and that is clearly in the wake of the event, one of the biggest reasons as to why they did this Charlie Kirk event. Who knows? He could have been a military operative all along, because as I've mentioned when this event happened about a month ago, he supposedly just started this whole Turning Point USA basically out of his garage when he was 18 years old, 19 years old. Around the same time when Trump started getting political, calling Obama out for his, for his birth certificate, and then
it's a little bit convenient, isn't it, Taylor?
It's a little bit convenient. Also, the domain name, the domain server / name for Truth Social was created back in 2011 as well. So that's this tells you it's November, I believe it's November 2011. So this is the same time that Charlie Kirk gets started. And as we both know, and as we all know throughout history, these big organizations do not just grow organically. They have backing, whether they're good or bad. Bill Gates, for example, he had huge funding from the Rockefellers, etc., in order to get him to where he was. He didn't create anything. Same thing with Elon Musk. He was a globalist puppet as well. So at the end of the day, you got to ask these questions. Obviously, I can't prove that Charlie Kirk was an agent, but I can certainly say that whether he was or wasn't, or whether this assassination was real or not, you can argue on that all day. At the end of the day, the whole point and what's clearly come out of it is the fact that Israel's reputation already badly damaged, is now tanking even harder.
I think that's the whole point, Taylor. There's so many conspiracy theories in speech marks come out about this. Oh, he's shot from the front. Well, I'm not an expert at shooting, but I have shot. And an exit wound looks different to an entry wound. So when I see his neck, it looks like something coming out, and then
It's
blood
JFK
pumps out of
2.0.
that. And what I'm saying is blood then pumps out of that. Yet we've got people like Candace Owens is throwing everything and saying he's shot from the front. Yet people are saying, no, he's shot from behind. Well, if he's shot from behind, they're shooting through a tent. They've hit him through a tent. So other than the radio mic, which is still it's a good question. Why does his shirt pop out and then it look like something comes out of his neck? What is going on? Is it real? Is Charlie Kirk dead? All these questions are really valid, but you're all called idiots for asking them. And we're all called idiots with JFK, Martin Luther King, RFK, the moon landings, blah, 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 blah. We can just keep repeating it. We've got all these questions, and we've got to be able to ask these questions and get the answers now.
I do got to say that I look at this Charlie Kirk shooting as basically a JFK 2.0. Whereas we know, thanks to released documents later on, and thanks to the work of people like Michael Collins Piper, that that Israel was the main people behind the JFK assassination for various reasons. Obviously, they weren't alone in that effort, just like they're not alone in pretty much any effort. But at the same time, they were the heads, and we have this shooting, which is very similar to the Kennedy assassination, and is now being also blamed on Israel. This time, of course, being a fake event, but the point is that it's basically a callback to JFK in its own way. If you look at it a certain way, because at the end of the day, this JFK was done in by Israel, and now Charlie Kirk shot him, who had a very similar event, also caught on camera as well. A lot of these shootings.
What would you point at when you say JFK was done by Israel? What would you point at? Just as one, with so many, just point at one.
Wait, what do you mean point at one? Are you talking about one reason?
Yeah. Why is it Israel that did JFK? Because I can show Israel did 9/11 and participate.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would recommend go if you want some added context, if you want the whole story, go read Final Judgment by Michael Collins Piper, and also, but I'll give a couple of examples here just to make it quick because we don't have much time. That being that, well, first of all, JFK wanted AIPAC to register as a foreign entity, a foreign agency, and that in and of itself would have been a huge blow against Israel, because AIPAC was always used for ever since it was created, I think the 50s or whatever, in order to rein in politicians, as well as pretty much anyone who spoke out against the who spoke against the New World Order. Just like the ADL, there's so many countless politicians and media moguls, journalists, etc., academics who have been shut down by the ADL and AIPAC, and so making it register as a foreign entity would have been a huge blow against them, and obviously that's something they didn't want. The second reason was because JFK was extremely hard on Israel regarding their nuclear project. He was pressuring David Ben-Gurion very pressuring him very hard to let the U.S. inspect the Dimona plant to make sure that they were not developing any nukes, because the whole idea was that he wanted to denuclearize the region, but Israel was being difficult. David Ben-Gurion even was so pressured in mid 1963. I think it was in the summer. He ended up having to step down, And then his replacement prime minister was also pressured by JFK the same way. So this was also a big.
What about? I don't know if you know much history about this one, but what about Yitzhak Rabin in the 90s? You know, I mean, I've seen where the crowd around Rabin's assassination was shouting and chanting, that Bibi is a murderer.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know what Bibi had to do with that event in particular because I haven't looked into that angle. But Rabin was murdered by the Zionists because he was a globalist. See, I mentioned this, as I mentioned before, the globalists and the Zionists, they while they do cooperate on many things like 9/11, for example, they are not they are not always friends with each other, and a lot of the time they hate each other even. For example, George Soros and Netanyahu have always hated each other because Israel has always been a thorn in the ass of the globalists that want to create a new world order, because Israel always creates all this turmoil over in the Middle East, so they can never get the Arab leaders on board because their people would never go along with it. Meanwhile, the Zionists don't really care about one world government. They just want Israel to rule everything. They want the Greater Israel Project. So it's like different crime families fighting each other. And Rabin, as I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, this was during the 90s. He was working with the president of Egypt and Bill Clinton in order to establish peace relations between Palestine and Israel. And obviously, all three of these people ended up with negative fates because of this. Rabin was assassinated by a Zionist, part of the Likud crowd, and the I forget, was it Arafat, or I forget the name of the Egyptian president. He died a few years after 9/11 after claiming.
Taylor, how do you feel then? Because I mean, we've seen it obviously that Bibi got like the record number of rounds of applause in American Congress. So are we seeing a difference there now? Because Trump is, as far as I'm concerned, he's still a bum chum of Israel. Are we seeing a difference there? Or shall we say, are we seeing a portrayal of differences? Because as in the chat room, Dinny has mentioned that Israel run the US. And I can't disagree with that, Taylor. So do you see a difference there?
Well, yeah. And I've talked to Dinny many times about this. The thing about Dinny is he just likes to fuck around and just say stuff in order to piss you off. So at the end of the day, I try not to take a lot of the things he says too seriously. Nothing against Dinny. I think he's cool, but Dinny, you don't always have to be a dick. You know what I mean? But anyway. So yes, Israel did used to run the Congress and the country back then, or rather, to be more specific, they used to run the neocon faction of things, because at the end of the day, they would work with the Marxists in order to accomplish their goals, because the amount of power they had. However, because of the Q operation, because of Commander Trump, that has changed over the last decade. Trump even said so himself back in, I think it was during his first term. I don't remember exactly when. He said that before, Israel used to run the Congress, and now it's the exact opposite. And then, of course, in order to add street cred to himself, he says, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, what's happened. And I've mentioned this so many times about, Israel. So it really annoys me when I see these people coming around saying, oh, Trump's a Netanyahu puppet, all that shit. But anyway, so right now we have both the left, the hardcore left, and the right, both being against Israel. Because obviously you have the right, where you have people like Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, even Alex Jones now, etc.
Well, hang on. Do you not see that there's something strange about that pattern? That people who have all, from maybe not those people that you're naming, but from those communities, they've always been pro-Israel. that is now being taken back. We saw in the European parliaments where people walked out when Israel was stood to talk.
That was
So
beautiful.
we are seeing that Europe and nations are now turning on Israel. If we put that into biblical terms, we're looking to see Israel surrounded by its enemies. Now, we've seen Israel now sign this great peace treaty. You know, the hostages are coming back and everything. So we are seeing things here, Taylor. It's just not as for me anyway. I won't speak for Alex. I'll let Alex speak for himself. But for me, I don't see a great difference in there's going to be a benefit for me. I see what is being prescribed is biblical. What would you say to that, Alex?
Yeah, well, it's basically, as I said before, smoke and mirrors. If I just come back on the camera again.
Nice touch.
Yeah, I trimmed it earlier. Yeah, it's smoke and mirrors. So the problem is you have got to hold a provisional position. Everyone, like I've said in the past, everyone's unique, and we've lived for a certain amount of time. We've had a certain number of experiences. People select theories. They have a lens on the world, and they select theories as much because of their own pain as anything else. Like we see things in the shadows that we've been impacted by. So, you know, if you've encountered a tyrannical parent, your view of tyranny, your view of harm, your anger reflexes will be conditioned by your unique experiences, but you won't see that. That will be in a blind spot for you. It'll simply be the lens through which you look out onto the world, and then you'll see certain actors on the world stage, and you'll connect your own pain, which is invisible to you, to the actor, and you'll identify with the actor, and you project your stuff onto the actor. And everyone's doing that. Unless you develop consciousness and awareness, and unless you have an objective yardstick, and this is where, as a Christian, we kind of say, we use scripture. And hold on, let's get to Dorian's question. I'm going to have to because I'm on one here.
I knew you'd have to ask.
Internal dialogue. He relies on scriptures like NPCs do. I can't remember the last time I quoted scripture. I didn't know NPCs quoted scripture. But anyway, I was making points that are more linked with psychology and Jungianism.
He's only teasing. Only teasing.
I wasn't sure. But yeah, it's this inner frame that we've got, yeah? So we've got this inner frame, and if you reflect inwardly, you'll become aware of your emotional states, or you should do. If you're emotionally unaware, it's all right. We talk about libtards and leftards and so on and so forth, and whatever our terms of endearment that we use. But we only get to those places because we become like an ostrich with a head stuck in the sand. So whatever the theories are, whatever the paradigms are for explaining what's going on in international relations, no matter what slant that you've chosen, there's no such thing as total objectivity for a subjective human being. You've got sources, then you construct your particular story from the sources. Everyone's story is subtly different, sometimes massively different. And in this massive melting pot, we've got all these differences. Beyond that, we've got an emergent reality if you believe in something spiritually orientated. And from the Christian perspective, it's the return of Jesus Christ to the Mount of Olives, to, as I said at the beginning, the blood feud that started with Cain and Abel, that became tribal and regional. Everyone else has been co-opted into. So it makes sense that at the end, Israel and the positions against Israel, whether it be, a caliphate approach, a leftist approach that you see under Starman in Europe, or against the right wing, specifically Jewish approach, the views of Messiah, the views of salvation and redemption, there are those who believe you must save yourself under their own strength. There are those who believe there's going to be an external savior.
No.
And then the views on who that saviour happens to be is different, and you've got this political mess. But from the Christian perspective, Jesus comes back, ties it all up, puts a ribbon on it, and ends this dispute once and for all, which he ended on the cross. But obviously, there's going to be a final judgment of all this garbage that's developed.
Oh,
and the true culprit needs to be thrown into the lake of fire, first of all. Satan, the adversary, who hates all of God's creation.
Alex, are you faith alone?
No.
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 We are saved by faith alone, by grace, aren't we?
No. That's salvation by grace through faith, not by works of the law. You're not justified by the works, but without the works, the faith is dead. So you've got to broaden it out in order to live. So I often talk about Wesley: scripture, tradition, reason, and experience. Reason is logos. God's is the divine logos, Christ, the perfect expression of rationality, manifested in the flesh. We also have logos. We have reasoning capacity. King Nebuchadnezzar lost his because he opposed God. He thought he was above God, so he lost his mind. He was turned to a beast. He had to be humbled. Our rationality, when aligned with God's order, like I said before, the whole creation order, when we align with that, we're in our right mind. When we're in our right mind, and everybody is, society is better. When we turn it upside down, like the adversary wants to do, we end up with chaos.
So, but if we take it to individual, we are saved by grace, by the gift of God, the grace of God, right? We are saved, and it's our faith in that. The works we will do from that. That's why when somebody says, I was a Christian, but now I'm not, I don't believe that you ever were, because we have to define that term Christian. So I understand what Wolf is saying in the chat room. We are saved by grace. It's a gift from God, and we're saved by the faith in that. But from that faith comes works. It's not based on anything else until that. And then I think once you are saved, as we've had so many conversations about it, because we are look at what when we did the Bible study down at Ilfracombe, when we took that Bible study on, we knew that we were coming from a faith of grace. And I think that's basically what Wolf is getting at on that point. So we are saved by grace, and faith in that alone. We can't be saved by any other way. Everything that comes after that, though, if it's works, it will be for the kingdom and not against.
Here's the issue, though, with like faith, because even if you say Christian faith, it's faith in what? Now, if people just say it's faith that Jesus died on the cross for your sins, right? So let's just take philosophically, take the sentence, Jesus died on the cross for your sins. And we say that's the only sentence that means anything. And we have faith in that. But who was this Jesus? So if you don't know that Jesus was God incarnate, if you believe he was somebody else, if you believe, whatever, it's not God who came as Emmanuel, in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, God with us, then you believe he's just a man, or there's a different theological framework. It's not God because he wasn't God. So you have to believe it's the God-man on the cross. And therefore it's not just his blood atoning for his sin. It's God bridging the gap between us and him and the creation, which got shattered by our rebellion and the adversary.
Let me just pause, because Megasaurus has just said, so Webster is saying, when Martin says he is a failed Christian, which I don't believe Martin has said he is, because Martin's a Jew, doesn't necessarily mean he's a Christian. But I believe, apparently, that he never was one. Well, if you're a Jew and you follow Judaism, you aren't a Christian. It's as simple as that. But like I said, we've got to define the term Christian, because if a Christian is somebody who is a Catholic or a Jehovah's Witness or a Mormon, if those three, and there's 700 of them, say that they're Christian, but they disagree with what the scripture says, then they aren't Christian in my reckoning. So if Martin's saying that he's a failed Christian, then he's not a Christian, is he? You can be a Christian and fall down and keep trying and keep going on. So you're a progressive Christian. I don't know how else to put it. So we keep going. Or you're not a Christian because you settle for something that the scriptures don't say.
I mean, Jesus said he came to the sheep, the lost house of Israel.
He came for the Jews. He came for at the Tower of Babel, where God said, "They're my people." Them. Out of those people will be this. So out of those people came Christians.
Yeah.
But how then bastardize them into all the others that say, "Yeah, we're Christian"? It's rubbish.
That generation of Jews at the time rejected him. So he came, God was incarnate at that time, and he came to his own people, and they failed to recognize him because they were looking for an Emmanuel, if they were, who basically was going to boot the Romans out, who was going to use political power, empire power, which is the power of the firstborn. But already early on in the narrative, right from the beginning, God kept thwarting that and saying, yeah, I know the rules in this fallen world, and that the firstborn is the one who carries the imperial lineage on. Well, that's the place where everyone projected their expectations. That's where the damage is. That's where the pain is. The parents project it onto that child who carries all that responsibility. And then, as we see with Prince Harry, he feels psychologically like the spare part, the alienated one. Ultimately, God turns it around. He turns up in first century Israel, and he shows up expecting to be recognized by his people, because they should have been prepared when they read the Old Testament. They read Isaiah the prophet, if they read Zechariah chapter 12, verse 9, and they shall look upon him whom they have pierced, and they'll mourn, right? So eventually the Jews will recognize, but at that time they didn't recognize him. So they still don't recognize him as their Messiah, and they're still waiting for Messiah. If they hadn't rejected him, since he was sent to them, the Gentiles may not have had that opportunity. But out of that, God gives the Gentiles the opportunity through Paul, who separates off from Judaism. He cuts the circumcision out. He cuts all the external markers of nationhood out and says it's not about that. Just like Jesus said, the true worshippers worship in spirit and in truth. Based on faith, you don't need priests anymore. You have direct communion with God through Jesus. You don't need to recreate the priest by saying Mary is the one. No, she isn't. We don't venerate Mary. That's idolatry. You don't pray to Mary. That's a sin. So Jesus expresses God. His people who he came to failed to recognize him. The Gentiles get a chance. The era of the Gentiles happens till the full number come in that God's going to save. Then he turns his attention back to Israel, which is Romans 11. And then at the end, when it all kicks off and everything's focused on Israel, a certain portion of the Jews will recognize Jesus as Messiah, and they'll complete the circuit, and then it ends. That's the grand story out, basically.
So when you say it ends, how does it end for people who don't know Jesus?
Yeah, well, that's it, innit? Ultimately, we know what the scripture says very clearly, and it's not.
Is it black and white?
No.
No, it's not.
Nothing's ever black and white. God weighs the heart. Jesus was the means through which God revealed his heart of love to the world. Jesus washed the feet of his disciples. He didn't. He came into Jerusalem on a donkey, on a beast of burden, right? He's a king.
Hey, bro. Hey, hang on, though. Muhammad travelled on a donkey from Mecca to Jerusalem. He flew on his donkey. Is that not the same?
He'd have been better going Ryanair, mate. Cheaper.
Oh, yeah, that's not right. Taylor, have you got anything else to share, or have you finished?
I do have one more that I'd like to show.
Then let's do it, because we've gone way over time, and I'm very grateful that Alex, with his moustaches, stayed with us this long. So
That mustache is. I like the Hitler look. It's nice. It's very.
that's
nice.
not a Hitler tash, mate. That's not a Hitler tash. I tried to convince him to have a Hitler tash, but he wouldn't go for it.
It's close enough. It's close enough.
What do I need to do?
Don't get him going. Zeke, no, stop it, Taylor.
You could get a YouTube strike for this, mate. I'm surprised. To be honest, I think even YouTube would go, we don't know what the hell's going on here. We just don't know what they stand for.
No. YouTube would go, that's Taylor. We've already got his account.
Yeah, they don't got to know more though.
So come on, sort it. What have you got?
Well, first of all, it's from the New York Times right here. Actually, take a look at this picture. Look at these two pictures side by side. They look pretty alike, don't they? This is Trump after hearing about the so-called peace deal to the wag the dog war in Gaza, and then this is obviously Bush when he's being told by his secretary, was it Secretary of State or whatever? I don't know. About the second plane hitting the second tower. And I believe that this is right. This might just be a calm, considering how alike they look. It might not be. It might just be a coincidence, but it's worth mentioning at least.
So hang on. So the Trump one, what are they telling him?
Oh, about the peace deal. That's Rubio. That's Marco Rubio.
Deal? Bloody hell, that's a little bit different to that.
No, well, the point is,
the one on the left is a peace deal. The one on the right is America's under attack.
No, but the point is just look at the visual side of it.
And that's what I mean. How? Do you know what? If that is not planned, that is completely inappropriate and coincidental. And I don't believe that.
Yep, this is what we call comms.
This is the film you were talking about.
Yep, exactly. The film, written by White Hat Productions. This is the Q operation. Everything that we're watching right now, and we've watched for the last several years, has been a scripted movie, and it hasn't changed just because Trump is now optically back in office. He never left, by the way. But the whole point is that this is all a movie right now, just like the Wag the Dog war in Gaza, all a movie. Just in order to, well, I've mentioned this so many times, to destroy the reputation of Israel. How do you take down a dangerous animal? Do you approach it from the front by calling it a Jew? By saying, "Oh, the Jews, the Jews." No, you don't do that. You approach it from behind, and Q mentioned this several times in this post, which people should go read.
And what do you do? What do you do from behind? Do you bum it? Do you what? What do you do?
Well, what happens is first you gain its trust. Like, say, for example, if it's a lion, you give it some meat. You give it some meat in order to gain its trust. You're like, "Here, little kitty, have some of this." And then when it falls asleep, you fucking kill it. That's what happens. It's just like in the movie The Godfather 2 specifically. When Marco whatever his name, the main character, played by Al Pacino, when he has to get close to Hyman Roth, and who killed his father. He knows he killed his father, but he's still going to kiss up to him to get close to him. And then at the last second, when he gets the chance, he's going to pop him. He's going to have him killed. And it's the exact same thing here with Trump. That's always been his relationship with Netanyahu and Israel over the last 10 years. All these nice little gestures that he's done, like moving the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing the Golan Heights as Israeli. which, by the way, has already been the case for several decades. So people making a big deal out of that really don't know what they're talking about. But regardless, saying all these little nice things about Israel. Meanwhile, at the same time, even he himself has gone on record saying very negative things about Israel, including saying, quote, "Fuck Netanyahu." He said that.
How dare you?
How dare you? How dare you? By the way, I just want to mention that.
Calm down, Greta.
Yeah. By the way, I'm really liking what they did with the Greta Thunberg thing, because they did the same thing to her they did to Elon Musk. They took out the real person, either imprisoned or killed, either or, and then replaced them with a different person in a mask.
Oh, right, Taylor. Do you see when you say things like that? Do you see how people will go, "Taylor, you're a knobhead," because only because today, right? Have you ever heard of the band called Lost Prophets?
I think so, maybe.
Possibly not. But the band Lost Prophets had a lead singer called Ian Watkins, who's a horrendous paedophile, and he's been stabbed in his neck and he's dead. So there's no Ian Watkins coming out with a mask on. So you are now touching on things. We've got to break this down, because things like this happen, right? In prison, people get arrested who are idols, like Ian Watkins was. There was girls throwing themselves at him and blah, 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 and he turns out who he is. Now he's no more. You're speaking of things, of people who are not necessarily anymore, and they're in a justice system where we think something's happened to them, but we don't actually know. So take it bit by bit, Taylor.
Well, I'm going to be honest here. I don't really think I can go deep into that subject here, because we're short on time. But what I will suggest to people is go and read or watch the video I made on it. The book called "The Secret Plan to Save Humanity" by Mike King. It's on. I'll here. You know what? In fact, let me just go ahead and just pull it up on real quick on my Amazon, on the website, or Amazon, either or. I'll just go with the Amazon link, because if you want to understand the Q operation, if you want to understand, well, first of all, okay, hold on. Let me go ahead and just stop showing this for a second. Come on, StreamYard. There you are. And window, tab, Secret Plan to Save Humanity, right here. So first of all, you want to read, well, actually, let me go ahead and, this book right here, The Secret Plan to Save Humanity. Do you see it? I mean, do you have the tab pulled up?
I will have in a minute. I'm too busy about the chat room talking about milking a donkey.
Oh, boy. I'm going to milk someone's donkey in a second.
Oh, hey.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny. That is funny. Oh, man.
I want a woman to milk my donkey. That's all I can say. I want a hot chick to do it.
Well, Ashley Styles will not do it with both hands. So.
Damn, bro. Oh, my God.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant.
That's crazy.
I think that's got to be one of the best comments in the chat room ever.
Oh, for fuck's sakes. Oh, man, you guys can get crazy.
I can't believe you'll never milk a donkey, Alex. I really can't.
It never appealed to me until
It's never occurred to me, never mind appealed.
Apple Charlotte, can you milk my donkey, please?
How can you milk a donkey? I don't get it.
Something went wrong in the wiring somewhere.
Mate, do you know what, Taylor? You're just going to have to take it from here and try and get us away from milking donkeys.
Hey, I'll tell you what.
I'll try my best. First of all, do you have my tab pulled up?
No.
Do you have my
the Black Forest donkeys are going to be crapping themselves.
No, do you know what? Denny will defend them. He'll be sat on his donkey. He'll be riding his donkey up and down with all his armor on,
Hey, yo.
yelling at everybody else not to ride his donkey.
Oh, yo. Hey, yo. What the fuck? That is what she said. That is okay. Okay, let's go ahead and continue this. So, anyway, this is what I recommend to people, and I just recently did release an audio book on this one. First of all, you want to read this book by Mike King called Crash Course NWO 250 Years of the Globalist Conspiracy in Just 1 Hour. You can buy this on Amazon or his website at realnewsandhistory.com. You can read this in an hour, or you can just watch the video that I did on it, where I read the whole thing. Goes over the history of the New World Order, starting all the way back from the founding of the Illuminati all the way to the present day. This was released 2 years ago, as you can tell by the by this right here. And so this book defines the problem. It outlines and describes and tells you what the problem is, and the history of it, and how powerful it really is, and who the players are. And then this right here is the follow-up, which you want to read afterwards. Of course, for you guys, you probably already know about you guys already know about the New World Order and everything. But here's the follow-up book, The Secret Plan to Save Humanity, a summary of the Q operation and the rise of Commander Trump. So this book will follows up and outlines the answer to the problem, which is all about the Q operation formed with the purpose of taking down the New World Order. If you want to understand the history of the military and its relationship with helping to keep the New World Order people in check, going back decades and even about a century, I could list several examples off the top of my head. But if you want all of that, read this book. Also can be read in just under an hour. I personally was able to do as well. Again, you could also watch my video that I did of it, where I read it out, where this is the answer to the problem, and it pretty much proves beyond a shadow of a doubt, in a simple format that's easy to understand. The whole thing about this author is that he makes things simple, but not but he doesn't. How should I put this? What's the right word? It's simple to understand, but it's not written, but it's not described, but it's not stupid, basically. But he makes it easy for anyone to understand.
You didn't make that sound real.
Yeah, I didn't. I'm not the best at describing stuff sometimes, so you're gonna have to give me a break on that one. But the point is that.
Well, hang on. I'm sorry. I'm distracted here at the minute, Taylor, because Dinny is telling me that the milk of a donkey is really, really nice. And
bro, man, Danny,
hang on. And you milk a donkey like you milk a cow. Now, I've known many people, some in farming, and they've not milked donkeys and said, "Would you like a pint of donkey milk?" So I'm a little bit intrigued into what Dinny's talking about here.
Danny, I'm going to milk your donkey in a second.
Whoa, hang on. You don't get me banned. Stick on your own YouTube channel.
Okay, but anyway, let me just finish up talking about this book right here. So this is, again, just outlines the key operation. If you want even more, read this first. If you want more,
we're only thinking donkeys here, mate. So crack on with what you're talking about.
For fuck's sakes! Oh my god. Anyway, god dang it. Okay, so, So as I'm trying to say, is this outlines the answer to the problem, and if you want to understand it, read this book. You can even tell that it's good. I mean, look at all the 5-star reviews that it's got. It only has, 93% 5-star reviews. Like that's. I mean, it doesn't. It's proven.
Have you got any reviews? Have you got any reviews on donkey milking? I think that's what.
Oh, for fuck's sakes! God dang it, bro! Fuck your donkeys, yo. Oh wait! I shouldn't say that because you want.
Listen, no, don't. Dinny lives in the Black Forest. I don't know what goes on there.
God dang it!
He's milking donkeys, mate. We had to specify female donkeys. There's something not right here. Oh, and sheep milk's good too. Whoa.
Well, we already knew that one, but
He lives on the edge, and he lives in the wild.
I'm gonna make him live on the edge in a second, if you know what I'm
Brilliant,
saying.
absolutely brilliant.
Oh
Go
man,
on.
but
Sorry, carry on with your presentation, mate.
yeah. So yes. Anyway, as I'm trying to say, read this book if you want to understand it. If you want even further information, because obviously this you can only include so much information in an hour read.
Of course.
You want to go onto the Q board itself, just which I will show right here. Q alerts. You want to read that there's about 5,000 posts that Q made in his 5 or so years of posting. All
is that from 2017 onwards, or
2017, and from November of 2017 up until
22?
Up until 2020, and then he disappeared for 2 years, and then he came back for about a couple hundred more posts in 2022, and then we haven't seen him since.
Is there any reason for that, do you think?
What?
Is there a reason for that, do you think?
Yes, and that's because while we don't have Q himself anymore, what we do now have is Trump's True Social posts, which is around the same time that he went to True Social. By the way, I just want to mention, this is the reason why that that Trump ordered Twitter to erase his account. Yes, that was all planned, because he wanted to be able to have the optical excuse to be able to bring True Social online, and be able to have a big platform for the Trump people, for MAGA, and for truthers to be able to go to, that has some kind of mainstream appeal to it, because obviously things like Gab and BitChute are going to be more on the fringe, unfortunately. That whole thing is there. But again, Trump's True Social posts, as well as the things said by people like Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, etc., are basically just a 2.0 version of the Q post, because they really get you thinking beyond the surface level of what they're saying, especially Trump's True Social post, where he includes many comms in there. I mean, for Pete's sakes, Trump's True Social. In fact, let me go on to True Social real quick. You still see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go into True Social real quick, and let me go to Trump's page right here. Right here. Get the shit out of my face. All right, so look at this. What do you see right here?
Trump.
Okay, yes. Now look closely. Let's see
Trump.
here. Yeah, well, let me describe what's actually here. and trust me, you'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't see that when I pointed
it out. Oh my God!
That being, look at the lines. You have the 2 lines right here, and then you have this right here with the 9 stars in them. And what does this look like? A 9. When you have this right here in the blue, and then this little thing right here being the end of the 9, and then you have these 2 lines, which look like 1s, and they look like the Twin Towers.
Wow, I can see it, but are you not stretching there?
No, because obviously, if this,
I understand that. Honestly, I'm only being devil's advocate here. I see the 9. I see the 2 lines, right?
Yes.
Are you not reading into this for people who would ask that question?
Okay, yeah, I'll answer that. Yeah, let me answer that actually. See, okay, it's just like with the Q posts, or like with anything else. You take one thing by itself, and you can say, "Oh, it's a coincidence."
Oh, yeah.
Or you can take a few things by itself and say, "Oh, it's just a coincidence." There's, obviously, there's, that's not proof of anything.
Oh.
When you add all of these things together, when you add all of the different so-called circumstantial evidences together, and you notice a pattern, then you have a basis for saying, "Hey, there's something much more to this than just it being a coincidence." And Trump has posted so many 9/11 comms over the years on True Social. He's talked about it so many times, and not just Trump himself, but also the Q posts have mentioned 9/11 many times, etc. Tucker Carlson had just started a series talking about the things wrong with the event, the official story. etc. Trump has been all over 9/11. I mean, just think about on the day itself. Trump knew on the day itself that those buildings were brought down through explosives. He knew he knew the official story was nonsense. Now he had to go on. Now a few days later, he came out and said, "Oh, about the planes and stuff like that." Obviously, because he had to toe the line. Because back then he wasn't political. He didn't want to get taken down by the deep state. But nowadays, he can just come out openly and say these things because the deep state is done. And these are comms. Again, just like I showed you, with the picture of Trump next to with the picture of Trump next to the picture of Bush from 9/11. That's what we call a comm. This is what the Q team does because they know that the operation is taking so long, uncomfortably long, in my opinion. But they know it's taking so long. So what they do is for people like us who are for the anons who are able to see these things, they put out these comms for us to be able to keep us busy and to keep us fed while we're waiting for the big reveals to happen, for the big events to happen, the arrests and all that stuff. Because otherwise, without these comms, we'd go freaking crazy. So that's the whole point. Just like how the deep state used to do comms. You know how they would do predictive programming for things like 9/11? And they would have all these.
Oh, sorry, mate. Taylor, you're gonna have to add yourself again. I was.
He's been abducted by a donkey, mate.
No, that's. I think that's Wolf's Donkins. He's trying to get donkeys involved here. Yeah, it's just a dream, that. But never mind.
This show used to be boring, mate.
Hopefully, Taylor can click back in. I was trying to just take what he was sharing off, but hang on, he's back. I'm sorry about that, mate. I was trying to get rid of. I was taking off what you were sharing because you weren't sharing it, and I booted you. So please finish up what you were saying, pal.
Okay, yeah, it's understandable. It's all right. But yeah, the point is that the this whole thing is just like how the deep state used to do comms back in the day. You know how they, for example, 9/11, how they would in the 2 or even you could even argue 3 decades leading up to the event, they would have all these comms, these predictive programmings in the movies and the comic books and the TV shows foreshadowing 9/11 was going to happen. Well, it's the same thing here. These are comms for us to be able to see. And that's exactly what what the 9/11 on his face, on the war painting on Trump's face represents, because he's angry. Remember, he's from New York. He lives and breathes New York, so he was personally affected by 9/11. He watched the Twin Towers come down from Trump Tower on the day of the event. So he's very personally attached to this event, and he wants justice just even more badly than we do. But at the end of the day, the time has to be right. And that's exactly why Israel has had to have its reputation shattered so tremendously like it has. Now, let me just mention one more thing regarding this peace, this so-called ceasefire / peace deal. What I'm personally hoping, and I think we've already seen signs of this happening. I watched the Jimmy Dore show, and he talked about this, saying that
he touches on a lot of good stuff, Jimmy Dore.
Yeah, he does. Very good. But what I'm saying though is that what needs to happen now, and what I think is going to happen, and I'm hoping happens, is that the way this movie progresses, is that Israel, aka Netanyahu, quote unquote breaks the peace, they break the ceasefire, and starts stuff up again with either Gaza or Iran or whatever, and this will be the straw that breaks the camel's back, because that will be proof in the eyes of the public that Israel or the warmongers, which they've always been all this time. But this will be proof, and this will be the excuse needed for Trump to be able to come out and say, "Hey, I'm, Netanyahu, is a warmonger. I'm no longer Israel's friend, etc., etc." Because right now we have the left and the right, both pincer attacking Israel from their own ends. The center is not going to be able to hold. And so all we're waiting for now is just that straw to break the camel's back, because we already have the Charlie Kirk thing. We already have everything else. And once that happens, October 7th, they can reveal that October 7th was a false flag. Obviously, the event didn't really happen. The whole thing was a stunt. But the point is that, if it comes out that October 7th is a false flag, then that's just a skip beat away from 9/11. where you can reveal the real false flag that was done by Israel on September 11th. And then from there you can go to everything else that they're linked to, JFK, the Boston, maybe not Boston smoke bomb, the USS Liberty, etc., etc. So it's all just a matter of, we need that straw to break the camel's back. That's what we're waiting for at the moment, and that's what I'm hoping happens, because there's always the possibility that they'll just have Israel and Gaza and Palestine make peace, and then they live happily ever after, and then we never get any optical justice for what happened on 9/11, etc. I'll be very pissed about that if that happens personally, because I'm expecting to see some optical justice. But regardless, the fact of the matter is, I don't know the script. I don't know where it's going from here. But I'm hoping and praying that what I said happens, that Israel breaks the peace, and then that's right there. Because as Q said many times, we're saving Israel for last. And, obviously the reasons for that should be pretty obvious. So I'll just leave it off by saying this. If you want to learn more about Q, and I recommend everyone do, if you actually care enough to learn about the things that I talk about, instead of just talking shit, saying, "Oh, you're a Q-tard. You don't know anything about. You don't know anything. You're just stating some nonsense." Well, first off, go read the Q posts. Go read the books that I just showed on screen, or listen to my audiobook versions of them, and go listen to some people in the Anon community. Absolute Storm 1776.
Let me intervene. How about if you send those links?
I can do that.
Well, you could if you got the link that I asked you for.
The messenger?
Pissed off with. Yeah, but you pissed off with.
No, I told you in the private chat. I got it. I done it.
I've not got that. No, I got an email off you saying I'm pissed off with it.
Yeah, I was, but now I fixed it. I got taken care of. The only problem is
okay. I'll stand back. Don't worry. Put your guns away. But yeah, I'm glad you did that, because it's easier for me when I'm sending you a link. You can post what you want in. So when I advertise it, I can put it straight into the description. I'm not doing it all after, which it can take time. And if I'm being honest, Taylor, there's a lot of stuff going on. Not always will that get put, but if we've got that group, we can do it all together. So I'm glad that you can do that. I'll look into that after we finish the show. Do you want to just wrap up now, because we're nearly done 3 hours again. I'm surprised Alex is still here, but I want you to wrap up now, so then me and Alex can wrap up, because me and Alex tried to wrap up last week, and then we did another hour without you and Russ. I don't know what's happened to Russ. God bless that everything's okay with Russ, that he's not made it tonight. But have you got something to wrap us up with, Taylor?
Okay. Well, yes. First of all, go follow the links that Webby will hopefully post. You want to go to realnewsandhistory.com. It's a very good website to look at. There are certain creators on Rumble and also on X that are very good when it comes to this field. Go read the damn books that I sent, that I showed, and don't just sit there and talk shit about Q if you've never even. It's just like Webby says when it comes to the Bible. If you've never read it, how can you have an honest opinion on it? Well, if you've never read, and it's the same thing here. If you've never read the Q post, if you've never seen any of the work done by the Anons over the last 8 years, then you honestly have no right to be a critique, because at the end of the day, these people have put in some hard work and have learned a lot. And when you go there and critique them without having any kind of knowledge or having done any research of your own, you just look stupid, quite frankly. And it really pisses me off, honestly. I'm not trying to simp for anybody. I'm just stating the truth. I hate overconfident idiots who just say stuff without having done the research first. The same thing about World War II. These idiots who come around and say, "Oh, Hitler did this and Hitler did blah, 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 blah," and they haven't done any research into the topic. But anyway.
Well, on that point, that's a fair point, but this idiot has done research on Hitler, and we do have a bit of contention there, but that's for another program.
That's a whole other program, yeah.
But what you bring to this, Taylor, is your passion and it is your research. But because I've known you for 5 or 6 years, I think you must understand that we have to be able to pull that apart. What you've all said, because I've researched what you're talking about. I mean, bloody hell, I've listened to your full narrations of 3 hours of books, my friend. You know, it's not. I'm not ignorant to the information that you put out, but there is a fair bit of questions as well. But what I like about you, Taylor, is that yeah, you're very forefrontal and this. But when you're asked questions that hit something, you go, "Oh, right, hang on, I'll have to check that," and that's what I like about you. So.
You see, that's what a journalist is supposed to do, man. That's what a journalist
exactly, and a scientist,
and a scientist, yes,
and a scientist. So I thank you for that. I'll check my emails and make sure see if I've got a link so we can get a more closer link with this, and then maybe add you to the group.
How do I send you my Facebook Messenger as an email? How do I do that?
Well, go onto your Facebook account, right click on your address bar, copy it, paste it, and I'll go straight to your Facebook page then, and I can message you.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yep, nice one, mate. Thanks again, Taylor. I'll be with you through the week, and I'll text you shortly, brother.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate it, man. And thanks for having me on again.
God bless, Taylor. Alex.
Yo.
Wrap us up without donkey milk.
Yeah, well, without donkey milk, yeah. So
I've never had donkey milk. People are talking like, people in the chat room are saying about donkey milk as if it's great. I'm what?
Does it taste like donkey?
I don't know. I'll have to ask Eddie Murphy.
Goat milk tastes like goat. So
who?
Goat milk tastes like goat.
What's a goat taste like?
Goat milk. It's goat, isn't it?
You're sounding weird, mate. You're sounding weird.
Yeah. So basically, Taylor has said probably 5 minutes before he finished up. He talked about the Q operation.
Yes.
And was saving Israel till last. Right now, that's all I heard. Famous last words, because I think what's interesting about this is, like you said, Taylor's analysis is deep and it's accurate. So what he's seeing from the sources pretty much does demonstrate that there are operations and counter operations, and we all know that these things happen. So we talk about the deep state. We talk about those things which are not visible. This is why we need journalists, like he said, and we've said many times. And you need quality sources, and you need people who can open things up to the light. But like I said earlier about truth, when something's clearly false, so for example, everybody knows that what Starmer is doing is dismantling this country. Everybody knows, but he knows he's sat pretty, so he just ignores all questions, and he'll just run the steamroller through and implement all the things that his handlers have told him to implement. Now, regardless of where Farage is coming from, even if he's not so inside, the reaction that he's producing to Starmer is the same reaction that everybody else has got, but he's articulate enough, knowledgeable enough, and has enough connections to be able to give the lie to that and to point to a different truth which clearly corrects the falsehood. Now, we can all see the falsehood. So it's very easy for us then to align with Farage. So again,
Yeah.
We can analyse all of that and say, yeah, absolutely, Starmer is what he is. He's doing what he's doing. It's pretty clear. We're not deceived about it. We can also identify how Farage is a very, very necessary correction to that, just like Trump to the Biden and the Dems administration. So that's a true and accurate corrective. Everything that they talk about is putting right things that were very wrong. But as we've said many a time, and then we'll turn our attention to Israel last. We'll deal with them last. So that's the agenda. That's the plan based on how we overtly assess the situation. But what is the overt assessment of the situation? You know, we talk about Club of Rome, and we talk about the Bilderbergers, and we talk about the Rothschilds, and we talk about the bloodlines. And none of us have been there. We've had to pick this stuff up indirectly through others' journalism, through our own research, but we can't corroborate it 100%. So we just got these stories, and we definitely know that some of these things need at least tweaking or not completely throwing out. And then some person comes along and says that was an operation, and we're running an operation that's going to correct the operation. And then what do they say? And then we all lived happily ever after. And that's where the lie is. And then, oh, we've got peace. And that's where the lie is. Because once everybody's had that tension resolved, like the thunderstorm comes, everyone breathes out, relaxes, and says, everything's fine. Now, anyone researching simply on those lines, you know, there's no person, right, who's trying to con you, who's going to present themselves to you as a good faith operator. Oh, he's gone. Or not a good faith operator, right? They're going to say, I'm a good faith operator, even if they're not a good faith operator. So we can't expect people with an agenda or their own specific focus. We can't expect them to kind of go, yeah, you got me. Actually, I'm a con artist, or I'm self-deceived, or I've been duped. So everybody passionately believes in their version of truth. And, you know, we do, but we don't have as much power. But these people in positions of influence, these people running these operations, have a great deal of power. So they have a lot more power than we do, and they can skew the story in particular lines. So they might appear on the surface to be on the side of right. They might appear to be correcting errors. Everything might seem to be aligned. Everything might seem to be bob on. But at the end of the day, once we get past the veneer, what's going on behind that even? Now, we know with deep state and other stuff, there are operations and operations behind operations, and we can't see all of it. We rely on others. We've got to reconstruct a lot of this hidden picture. But what about the spiritual dimension? We're coming back to, again, what's the ultimate reality behind all of this? If we think it's just human operators, we've got a part of the picture. It doesn't mean it's not true, but we don't know where the checkmate is going to be delivered. So Jews and Muslims got him. Yeah, I don't know what's happened to Paul. Has his battery died or something? It looks like I'm monologuing here. But anyway, yeah. So I think that was the spin I was going to put on it all. There's not just the optics. In philosophy, there's two distinct branches that can be contrasted. One's called phenomenology, and it was developed by a guy called Edmund Husserl at the start of the 20th century, and it actually started to influence sociology as well, social sciences in general. But then there was also ontology, and the person who did a lot of work on that was Martin Heidegger. So ontology is about being, the fundamental nature of being. But then there's also appearances, the phenomena, the level at which the phenomena presents. It's like phenomenology is what do you see on the screen, and ontology is what is the being that's deeper behind that screen. Most of us are duped to look at the show. The phenomena are connected to the ontos, to the being, but they're not exactly the same. So it's like a sleight of hand. And those characters portrayed on the screen, they might be talking about truths. They might be dramatizing something really powerfully, like a movie might. And you really get invested. You go, that's so true. I know that's true. I'm aligned with that. I've had those experiences too. So you get buy-in. Once you get buy-in from people, it's very difficult for them to shift the perspective because they align with that. Because at some point, we've all got to have faith in something. It doesn't have to be God. We want to have faith in ourselves. We want to have faith in our own judgment. Nobody wants to believe that they are delusional. Everybody wants to believe that the take that they've got on truth is actually accurate. Who wants to believe something that's false? So once we get invested, and particularly when we get invested emotionally, then it's a different kettle of fish. It's very, very difficult then to convince people otherwise. And the phenomena that presented on the screen, if it really resonates with us, we often tend to settle at that level. We go, yeah, Trump's a good guy, and ultimately this is the operation, and it's overturned this other operation that was going on, and it's like this, and the research has been done, all of which can be true at the same time as being the biggest operation ever. And even the people running the operation might not know they're running an operation. They're the best kinds of people to recruit, actually, because they sincerely believe in what they're doing. They really do. They're passionate about it. Doesn't mean they're right. You can be sincere and wrong. So at the end of the day, all I would say is based on that. It's not about discrediting anybody. It's not about saying anyone's right or wrong. You know, when people do the research and the diligence, we should respect that. And like Taylor said, whether it's the Bible or whether it's the Q drops, you know, we shouldn't probably parade an opinion if we haven't done a little bit of diligence. But we can still ask, does it seem to add up, and what's going on behind the scenes? So from my perspective, guys, it's been a really good evening. I don't know how many are still watching. I have no idea where Mr. Webster has gone. But I don't even know if I can terminate this. I don't think I can terminate the live stream. Paul has disappeared. Hold on, something's come on the private chat. Let's just see if he said anything. No, he's definitely gone. So Webster going to come back as Trinity. Lol. He's chatted to Taylor. He wasn't happy with some of the comments. Yeah. Well. Anyway. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to end this stream. I don't think I can. We've been on for 3 hours and 6 minutes. It's 10 past 11. Paul has left the building. So I'm not sure if I can end this broadcast, to be fair. I can click out the show, and then I don't know what you guys will all be seeing. You'll probably be seeing a blank screen, and it might go on for 10 hours. I don't know. You could all stare at a blank screen for 10 hours. I carry on in the chat. So I suppose, do you remember when you used to go to a pub and you used to have after-hour drinking? They called it a lock-in. And they were illegal technically, but you knew of some of these pubs who did it. And it were a riot. Everybody loved it. It could just end up being that when I depart this show, because I can't monologue forever, it'll get tedious, then basically you lot might be able to stay on the chat. And unless Paul reappears, the show might never end. I mean, that's a really appropriate metaphor, isn't it? Because like life's a bit like a show. Does the show ever end? Well, we'll get up tomorrow morning and everyone will consider going back to work, unless you're lucky enough to be retired like I did a few years ago. But you'll go back to work and the show will go on, the Truman Show or whatever it is that we're living in. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate you turning up. We started off a bit spicy. These conflicts happen. People often take sides. That's not good or bad. It's just human nature. But what we need to do, I think, is be ultimately, we have to end up being adult enough to work through our differences. No matter who's at fault, blame game is the oldest game that's been in existence from the dawn of humanity. It's connected to the blood feuds. That's why these feuds escalate. And I think we have a responsibility to ourselves, to each other, to handle them in the most productive fashion that we can. So, yeah, Dennis doesn't want to hear Webby snoring for 24 hours. No, me neither. I don't know what's happened to it. Normally, he would have attempted to get back on by now. So, whether something has died at his end irretrievably, I'm not sure. But I can't see there's any point me keep blagging your heads with generic crap. So I think that sounds like a good one. Thanks everybody for coming on. Appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you next week. I hope you all have a great week. And you know, I think it's been a really good chat as well. We've covered a lot of ground again. So wishing you all the best, folks. Yeah, you should give me the link actually. I've kept trying to drag it out just in case he can come back, but it just doesn't look like he is. So, okay, guys, I am now going to leave the building. If you want to carry on the chat, why not do so? And I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Oh, hey up! I fancy that. Now, right, is that divine timing or what? I mean, come on. Right, Paul, were you sneakily watching the show? Right.
No, I'm trying to not swear.
Right,
I can't believe that the computer did what it did to me and locked me out of everything. I couldn't even get to the point to say, right, let's close the show. It just shut me out of everything.
Well,
so
that's right. I've just been monologuing for, I don't know, that must be about 10 minutes, mate. Just absolutely was about to leave the show, and then you showed up. I thought, he's got to have been watching this, and now he's trying to prove some kind of miracle, because the timing was incredible. I'm just about to go, and you come back on. Now tell us, Paul, that you weren't secretly watching on a mobile phone, because I was talking about the chat carrying on and you not closing the show, and just as I was about to go, you appeared.
No, I've been contesting my Christian values, because all I've done is swear at this keyboard and this mouse because it wouldn't do what I wanted it to do, which was just like basic stuff. It just locked everything up. But again, I go back to when we started the show, Alex. People have said, and people know we're talking about whatever, but people have said, oh, you don't use your camera. I don't use it because we have all these technical issues every week. And I think it's because we talk about real stuff. And I thought, we're doing really well here. We've been able to share everything. Taylor shared his stuff. I thought, we're cracking here. And we try and wrap it up. And then all of a sudden, I can't even shut the show. I have to come back on to actually stop the show. Otherwise, it'll just go on.
To people, yeah, you have to be able to log back.
It just goes on otherwise.
I was saying to him, Paul, it's like, do you remember we used to have lock-ins after hours in a pub? I said, like, you guys will be able to carry on. They could have carried on all week till you came back next week or something, So we're just having a laugh about that. But timing were immaculate, mate.
It's happened before. It happened on Raconteurs News, very famously. It happened with a guest who stayed online, and it reported all kinds of things while he was online. But that's exactly what happened. And I thought, I couldn't believe it.
Was he a donkey milker?
He wasn't a donkey milker. I thought if he milked donkeys, thinking back, it would have been. In fact, Raconteurs report, Taylor's already indicated who it was. But he just certainly didn't milk donkeys. If he'd have milked donkeys, I thought, we'd have had something. We'd have had something sure, but
we could have got no show tonight.
No donkey milking. But anyway, now I'm back. Thanks to everybody in the chat room tonight, including the people that came in earlier and have now gone. We encourage all this debate. We don't want to be deemed as these doom and gloom people, but we do want to speak about the truth, and we don't want to make light of it. Even though we do make light of it, we don't want to keep going on and how pussified it is and that won't happen and me. We need to talk about the truth at the end of the day. For me, I learned the truth from the hard way about this world, how all this world is. And I needed to know what was the way out of this. And there's only one way, funnily enough. And that's where we've got to go. So, are you happy with that, Alex? Now you've done your monologue.
Yeah, I just noticed the wolves comment. Good stuff about donkeys, but explain why God gets girl pregnant. To give birth to himself, to sacrifice himself to himself, while playing hide and seek in the Old Testament. And it's a good way. That's a good way of putting it. Actually, I think sometimes the more absurdist representations of what's going on teases out the logic. I think the answer to that.
I have to say, having read the Old Testament, God doesn't hide. Having read it, so I don't know what Old Testament he's reading. if he's playing hide and seek, because I see him clearly.
Yeah, well, I think that's interesting. But certainly that first part before that bit is interesting. The only way it can be explained is that God transcends his creation. So, you know, in Eastern spiritualities, they're monistic. They talk about unity consciousness.
I know. Yeah, but Alex, you can't debate somebody who put donkey versus Trinity. You know, it's I don't know.
No, but you can be a bit.
One of them.
I mean,
one of these days. Go on, sorry.
The monistic religions that talk about unity consciousness, that says that everything more or less is an illusion until we align. It's not that there's no merit in those approaches, but they've been very common in a lot of philosophies, including Stoicism, Taoism, Buddhism. In some ways, Islam says everything is the will of Allah. So basically, if you reduce everything to God's will, to a single polarity, it's easy, because all we have to do then is work out what that is and align with it. There's something very appealing about that, because you can even say that's trusting God. What
you're saying is, Alex, we don't have to take any responsibility.
That's that side of it. And the other side, in response to what Wolf is getting at here about the explanation of why, is because if God is transcendently other to his creation, God created his creation, which is everything that is not him that he created. Well, then he needs to be able to enter into it, because if God is remote, like imagine if you've had a really bad experience, really bad, and then somebody comforts you by saying, from a distance, they get a loud hailer out, and you go, yeah, over there, I know I'm totally untouched by this, but I hope you all feel better soon. I'm wishing you well from a distance, and not much I can do about it, but I'm all right over here. So God, who creates his creation, loves it and everything within it, sees it get corrupted. Unless he enters into it and redeems it from the inside, he's just some external philosophical construct or concept that we're all supposed to be believing in, but never got his hands dirty.
It's
Jesus
not his.
Got his hands dirty by washing the feet of the disciples. He went right into it.
Because it was his. It wasn't his if he doesn't go into it. And yet other religions say God would not go into his creation. There's no need. There's no need for God to go into his creation. That's what these religions state. Yet the Bible, that doesn't seem to be a religion, says that's exactly what he did. And I think at that point, Alex, we've got to just draw a line there. You know, the religion that we believe doesn't exist because it's not a religion. It's a relationship via the scriptures. It's not that the book is a living being, but the words are alive. Why? Because the word died, and the word became flesh, died, and then rose again to the right hand of God. And I think, go on.
I just need to respond to what Wolf said here. So God needs to sacrifice himself to himself. Why not just forgive then? There's a reason that can't happen, and it's connected
It's not just.
But it's connected. It's connected to the views of the atonement that got lost in the church. See, what happens is God creates anything. When God creates that thing, and he says he loves that thing, and it's conscious, sentient, and he wants to relate to that thing, he wants that thing to relate back to him, he gives free will, otherwise we'd be a robot. So the person has to choose, right? So it's the same with angels, it's the same with a fallen angel. So Satan, the adversary, was given free will by God. Now, when Satan chooses to use his free will to oppose God, and then God says, well, you shouldn't do that, Satan then says, you gave me free will. Now you're constraining the way that I use free will. That's not free will then, is it? Because I've got to use my free will to worship you. So that's not free will. And God says, no, you're free not to. So the point is, when we leave out that whole satanic aspect of it, It isn't just about saying, oh, I forgive you. So what happened was Satan lied about God's nature and said he was a tyrant by giving with one hand free will and then saying, but no, you've got to use that free will in a way that I say. So then Satan says, so that's not free will then, is it? So God, in like a courtroom dispute, Satan has tried to touch on the logic of God's offer, but God's offer is a natural byproduct of having any creation at all. Anything which is not God must then choose God to be in fellowship with God and has the option to reject God. Otherwise, you can't have love without free will. So then if you reject God, and then God says, well, that which rejects me cannot live, then Satan says, right, well, then you're punishing me for using the free will you said you gave me that you said was free. So the reality then is he has to prove that he's not a hierarchical, tyrannical God who gives with one hand and then takes back with the other. He then steps into his creation and goes to the bottom of the food chain as a human being, humbles himself, walks into, rides into Jerusalem on a donkey. Let's get back to our donkeys, not in the messianic role on a stallion, conquering, but giving of himself to silence the logic of the devil. And said, no, this isn't a hierarchy of power and abuse of power. I'm taking the lowest place. I'm taking a place lower even than the humans I created, and I'm serving them. I'm motivated by love, not power. And
it's like Wolf. The Wolf has just said in the chat room, right, about the Trinity. Islamic donkeys make more sense than Trinity. You've never read the Bible. You've never read the scriptures if you don't understand the Trinity. It's the Old Testament and it's in the New Testament. If you can't see it, you're refusing, because I can show it you. I could publish it right at the end of the show to show the Trinity in the Old Testament. The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, all three are God. Just one God. And the Word that everything's created through became flesh. You can't see that from the scripture. I don't care if you don't believe the scripture, but it's there in the scripture. And that's as far as I'm concerned, that's the truth. Well, so when you say the Trinity doesn't mean anything, it doesn't make sense because you've never read it. No, you've not read the Bible, mate. You've not read the Bible. If you've read the Bible, you can see the Trinity. So, no, and I'm not a Unitarian because Alex has explained what a Unitarian is. I'm telling you, you don't understand the scriptures. End of.
Well, anyway, the thing is with this, when Wolf says, why does God need to humble himself, mate? It's not that God needs to humble himself.
It's not a book, right? Dinner.
The bottom line is, when a perfect being decides to create something that's not himself, he is eternal and has life in himself. Therefore, he must give life to that thing which is not himself, which means that thing which is not himself is only upheld by, let's call it God's breath that he breathed into man and he became a living being. Nothing would live unless God upheld it with his own life, his spirit, right? So ultimately, when God creates Satan and Satan is given free will, he uses that free will and rebels against God. And God says, if you rebel against life, which is the only way life can be, is if it depends on God, because the word is contingent upon God. It doesn't exist independently and can't exist independently of God. So if you use your free will to reject God, you must die. That's just a fact. Because you've rejected God, you've rejected life.
Yeah, Satan's but how are you rejecting God? Because people say, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, but there's something missing.
Yeah, well, the thing is, obviously, there's this truth. He gives us being, he gives us life. He gives it to Satan. This is my point. He gives it to Satan. And Satan asks the deep, logical question, how can you say you're giving me free will and you're a loving God? So this is a logical challenge, criticism of God. How can you do that and then take that freedom away from me by destroying me? And God says, well, I'm not destroying you. You're inheriting the natural consequence of rejecting me, the source of life. You're in rebellion. You're in rebellion against your own life. But Satan twists it and then calls God a tyrant. Now, logically, philosophically and logically, if God gives freedom, free will, and logically you then say, I choose to reject you. And then God says, well, that means death. Satan says, well, then you're a liar, God, because you've given with one hand and you've taken away. So it's not free will, is it? There's no way of silencing the argument. There's no way of silencing the argument with logic. You can only demonstrate it by showing that you're not a tyrant. And how do you show that you're not a tyrant? You die for what you created. No greater love has any man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. And I call you friends, no longer servants, if you do what I command you. And what was that command? Love one another as I have loved you. That's how God shows that it's not a logical trap, that it's a false deal. Here's your free will, but then I'm going to take it away and destroy you if you don't follow me. It's just a natural consequence of being created, that you require God to uphold your life, and if you reject him, you die. That's just a facet of the nature of God creating reality outside of himself. But it got twisted by Satan into a criticism that said, you know, you give me free will and then you take it away. That's tyranny. God proved it wasn't tyranny. You could say he didn't need to, but it's an issue of honor. He basically silenced everything. Satan used it to attack God, to attack creation, to destroy humans. And God said, yeah, there's no answer. Satan was the one who inspired the mob to put Jesus on the cross and defeated himself in doing so.
Well, when we get to the point, though, I mean, Wolf's put again, faith personal, mate, but God is not a Trinity, end of. You've not read the scripture and you don't understand the scripture, because if, and I know, but if the scripture is the word of God, it tells you God is a Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And everything's created through the Word, and the Word was with God, the Word was God, and the Word became flesh. We've got to ignore all that and say that's not true. Well, it's just not able to do that, because what am I going to believe in? Because what are you going to present to me, Wolf? If there's no Trinity, what are you presenting to me? What else is there? Are you going to say Allah? I don't believe in Allah. I've got wonderful friends, one in the chat room there right now. I don't believe in Allah. I believe in Jesus. I believe Jesus being God. And that's what we'll debate. But he doesn't hate me for it. Does that make him a non-Muslim? You ask him. He doesn't hate me for not being following Allah, but he loves me for following Jesus. So what's the crack here? You know, you say there is no Trinity. Why? Why do you say there's no Trinity? When it says it, the Trinity is explained in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. And if you can't put both old and new together, you will never understand Jesus Christ, and you won't be saved. If you are in the law, Judaism, you're condemned. You've got to come to Christ. There's only one way. Isn't that right, Alex? If we don't come to Jesus, nobody gets through this.
It's a claim, and you either accept the claim or you reject it. And why does anyone accept or reject the claim? It's because the Spirit of God has shown them. I mean, it says in Isaiah 9 very clearly that Jesus, there's the one who's coming. This is several hundred years before Jesus. Yeah, he's Emmanuel, God with us, right? And he talks about him, mighty God, everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, right? So in all these different roles and forms, God, who's transcendent, enters in to be with us, right? So if we're made in God's image, we were created in his likeness. What's so unusual that he can then come into this creation of
Listen,
his.
Alex, the cloak's off. The cloak's off. Wolf has just said he thinks Jesus was a man. How can God be man?
Yeah, that's the philosophical position, that God can't be reduced to man. But we're talking about the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
So God is transcendent, and if you remain transcendent, nobody shall see God and live. I mean,
Could God become flesh?
absolutely, but all the Unitarians, Muslims and Jews believe that's sacrilege to say that. So Muslims believe that's shirk. That's basically saying that making a man.
Hang on though. Because all those people you said do commit that, when we look at what we think, what we know the Word of God is, which is the Scriptures, which people accept as Scripture, what does that say? That doesn't leave much open for discussion. You know, I believe Jesus was a man. Yes, God became flesh. So God became man and inhibited himself to all our frailties, because there's no other way, Wolf. There's no other way to fulfill everything. So he wasn't a man who became, he was a God who became man. He's the son
You
of
can't be saved by a man, can you?
He's the son of man.
You can't be saved by a man.
No.
Jesus said your sins are forgiven you several times to people, and they were healed. Only God can forgive sin, like the Jews said. That's true.
Yes.
So and therefore, they concluded that therefore Jesus was a blasphemer, because only God.
Now let's stop this. Hang on, Alex. We've changed tack. I know we're going on a bit here now, but we've changed tack. Faith is personal now, Webster. So faith is personal. So the relationship with God is personal. What does that change about what God became to fulfill everything as the law, as man, as an unsinned, a sinless human blood sacrifice on a cross? It's done. That is when everything was fulfilled. So yes, it is personal, but you've got to have the faith in that. So yes, Webster is faithful personally to Jesus Christ, because there's no other way out of this, because God became flesh to look. He virtually came down, Alex. He went, hey, my name's Jesus. What's what I'm going to do? This. Bloody hell. Only God does that. Yeah, I know. Look, I'm on a cross. See all that stuff you couldn't do? Yeah, I've done it. That's it. I've done it. Believe me, or sling it. And that's why you can't have people going, Jesus was a man. He became man. He became man to fulfill what man couldn't do. Oh, but God doesn't do that, Alex. God wouldn't do that. Well, my Bible says God loved me enough to come and do that, so I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah.
I don't really care whether you think Jesus is God or not. What I care about is what the Word of God says. And the Word of God says Jesus was God. So I don't care about what you think. Anyway, I'm really impressed with the chat room tonight, even though I don't know what happened at the start of it, how we couldn't get it going, mate. But I've really enjoyed the chat, and Taylor coming on. I hope, Russ, if you get to listen to this at all, I hope everything's okay over there, mate. Hope to hear from you through the week. Other than that, I'd like to say good night and God bless.
Yeah, and if anybody during this next week gets an opportunity to milk a donkey, you know, if you can get a bottle or so out of it, you can take a photo, maybe post it or something. It'd be interesting to see how you get on.
Yeah, I'm not going to make a brew with it, though. Thanks a lot, guys. Really enjoyed it.
Cheers, guys.
Good night. God bless.
Nice
See you next
one.
week. God willing.